Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. and this is the City of Desert Hot Springs special meeting of the Planning Commission on Tuesday, December 20th, 2022. At this time, I will call the meeting to order and have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Cook?
Present.
Commissioner Grant?
Present.
Commissioner Wagstaff?
Present.
Vice Chair Nandel?
Present.
Chair Duffel?
Present. Thank you very much. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. We'll move on to public comments. At special meetings, public comments are considered under the agenda item. When you do step up, please state your name and city of residence for the record. All comments are to be directed to the Planning Commission and shall be devoid of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain professional and courteous decorum during public comments. Moving on to the first and only public hearing on tonight's agenda, item number 1, consideration of the certification of the Environmental Impact Report ENV 21-3 Mitigation Monitoring Plan, Coachillin Specific Plan Amendment Number SP-21-2, and an ordinance amending Chapter 17.200 application to amend the Coachillin Specific Plan. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. The project site is approximately 153.71 acres divided into 46 parcels for the APNs 666-340-008 through -055 and is bounded by 18th Avenue to the north, 19th Avenue to the south, Indian Canyon Drive to the west, and Calle de los Romos to the east. On November 7, 2017, the City Council approved the Coachillin Specific Plan Number 01-17, which also included a general plan amendment, a tentative parcel map, a final map, a conditional use permit, and an addendum to the original MND. On June 30, 2020, Coachillin submitted their first Specific Plan Amendment Number 20-4 and Environmental Number 20-1, in which the Planning Commission made a recommendation for approval to the City Council on July 14, 2020. On September 1st, 2020, the City Council approved the Specific Plan Amendment Number 20-4 and Environmental Number 20-1. On October 7, 2020, Supporters Alliance for Environmental Responsibility, also known as SAFER, filed a lawsuit. On or about June 15, 2021, Coachillin and SAFER entered into a settlement agreement in which the following was agreed. That 1, the 2020 amendment was vacated and set aside, and 2, an EIR was to be prepared, circulated, and considered by appropriate bodies for any approval of the specific plan. On October 11, 2021, Coachillin submitted a Specific Plan Amendment Number 21-2 and Environmental Number 21-3, which is before you today. The item before you this evening will address 2 components for consideration. 1, the recommendation to certify the Environmental Impact Report, and 2, the Specific Plan Amendment. The Specific Plan Amendment includes changes to the following: the project name, the POA, the development standards, the allowable land uses, the design guidelines, additional language to allow for hemp in the future, a newly added sign program for the project, updates to the development regulations, and added language throughout the specific plan. The proposed amendment related to the change of the name would remove Cultivation and Ancillary Cannabis Business Park. The name specifically changes from Coachillin Industrial Cultivation and Ancillary Cannabis Business Park to Coachillin Industrial Business Park. The POA changes the Specific Plan Amendment, removes the responsibility for the maintenance of the common areas, streets, perimeter fencing, security, etc., and place the responsibility on property owners or other unnamed parties. The POA would no longer be required by the specific plan, which leave no criteria in place for the security and maintenance of the common areas. Additional changes can be found within the agenda packet. The amendment to the 2017 specific plan would modify the allowed land uses in the mixed-use zone along with accompanying changes in the development standards to allow for potential hotel and amphitheater uses on parcel number 30 and 31. The allowed use for a hotel would include 175 guest rooms within a 4-story, 150,000 square foot building. The allowed use for an amphitheater would be able to seat approximately 5,000 people and host a maximum of 4 events per month. The specific plan amendment proposes to redesignate parcel 25 to allow for a solar-covered parking lot totaling 420 spaces. The amendment would also allow for additional uses in the mixed-use zone shown here in the table before you. The proposed amendment to the 2017 specific plan development standards would modify the structure height. Previously, the structure height requirement allowed for 2 stories at 55 feet max for parcels adjacent to Indian Canyon, 18th Avenue, and 19th Avenue, and Calle de los Romos, and 3 stories at 65 feet for all interior parcels. Under the 2022 specific plan, the structure height requirement would allow for 75 feet max for parcels adjacent to Indian Canyon, 18th Avenue, 19th Avenue, and Calle de los Romos, with the exception of parcel 30 allowing for 120 feet. All interior parcels will also allow for 120 feet. Previously discussed was some of the major proposed changes to the specific plan. The following are summarized additional changes as mentioned in the agenda packet. Added language for flexibility for review authority. Added language to allow for future use of hemp. Addition of a sign program and electronic sign regulation. Addition of requirements for general plan and special event traffic management plans. Additional language for wastewater remediation and discharge. Addition of an art in public places program. Additional details added to design guidelines language. Per Government Code Section 65451, specific plans shall include a text and a diagram which specify all of the following in detail. 1. Distribution, location, and extent of land uses. 2. Transportation infrastructure including sewage, water and drainage, and other essential facilities support needed within the plan. Standards and criteria for conservation, development, and utilization of natural resources within the plan. A program to implement regulations, programs, public works projects, and financing measures to carry out such programs. Additionally, the specific plan shall include a statement of the relationship to the specific plan to the general plan. Although the requirements of the Government Code Section 65451 are mentioned in the 2022 specific plan, a careful review of the document is needed to ensure that each component of Section 65451 is met. The specific plan must be sufficiently specific and in detail to address each of the code sections. Coachillin is currently operating as a cannabis business park as defined in Chapter 5.50 of the DHS Muni Code. On July 8, 2021, the Cannabis Compliance Division requested that Coachillin apply and obtain a cannabis business park permit pursuant to the DHS Muni Code. After Coachillin failed to obtain the permit, a code compliance case was formally opened and a subsequent inspection was conducted, and Coachillin was found to be in violation of the Muni Code. Since the original violation in 2021, Coachillin and its operators remain out of compliance. The following issues are a summary of the current violations at the project site. Since July 8, 2021, Coachillin has failed to obtain a cannabis business park permit and the site is unsecured. Parcel 33 under CUP 1717, which is expired, operators have been forced to surrender their permits or cease operations due to lack of security and no permanent structure for operation. There are a total of 12 operating facilities within the Coachillin Cannabis Business Park. Currently, every facility is out of compliance due to lack of security that was previously provided by Coachillin. There are 23 open code cases against Coachillin Holdings and the individual operators within the Cannabis Business Park. An environmental impact report was prepared in accordance with the CEQA guidelines section 15323, which states that an EIR should contain a brief summary of the proposed project and its consequences. The Planning Commission may take action on the following. 1. Approve a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending that the recommending that the City Council of the City of Desert Hot Springs, California, 1, certify the Environmental Impact Report, ENV 21-3. 2, adopt the Mitigation Monitoring Plan. 3, adopting findings of fact pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act and adopting a statement of overriding considerations. 4, approve Coachillin Specific Plan Amendment Number 21-2, amending the Coachillin Specific Plan of the city. And 5, approving the ordinance amending Chapter 17.200, approving the project. Or 2, approve a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending that the City Council of the City of Desert Hot Springs, California, 1, find that the California Environmental Quality Act does not apply to the project as defined pursuant to Public Resources Code Section 21080B5, as this project is rejected/disapproved. 2, not approve Coachillin Specific Plan Amendment Number 21-2. And 3, not approve the ordinance amending Chapter 17.200 of the City of Desert Hot Springs Muni Code, essentially denying the project. Staff would like to note that since the posting of the agenda, the city has received 5 comment letters which have been distributed to the commission, and we have hard copies available. That concludes my report. I'm available if you have any questions, and the applicant is also here. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia, for your staff report. At this time, we will go ahead and entertain questions of staff from the Planning Commission. Commissioner Cook, do you have any questions of staff at this moment?
Not at the moment.
Okay, Commissioner Grant?
None, Chair. Thank you.
Vice Chair Nindell?
Nothing down there.
Commissioner Wagstaff?
No comments.
Okay, no comments or questions of staff currently, so we will go ahead and open the public hearing and take testimony from the applicant, if the applicant would like to come forward.
Thank you very much, Chairman and fellow commissioners. I appreciate your opportunity, or the opportunity to present this specific plan amendment to the city. We understand it comes under much controversy. It's highly unusual that a staff would put before Planning Commission a document that has no recommendation attached to it. So we're going to spend the lion's share of our time addressing Ms. Mizrahi's resolution to deny the project, so that it is very clear to Planning Commission members that the items in her resolution are not true, are not reasonable, and need to be rethought, but not only by Planning Commission, but we think it's best to send it up to City Council. So I do have copies for everybody. I'd like to pass out. So we first we also have here Jason Ackerman, who is our CEQA counsel. Jason will present the CEQA portion of this document. We also have Annie Sergio from ECOR, who is our environmental engineer, who performed a lot of the CEQA in this document. Both of them are here and will testify to you that this is a document that is defensible and ready to go if in the event that the city would get sued by SAFER or any of the other 5 folks who wrote letters to object to the project. We also have here Matt Renaud from NV5, so that you will get any and all engineering reviews. You'll get the opportunity to hear from them that this project is ready to go. It is good. It is nothing more than a specific plan amendment. And in the end, what we're asking Planning Commission to do is approve this project because you want a hotel and an amphitheater at the entry to your city, which will be a hugely valuable asset to this city, since we haven't had a new hotel here in years. So with that, I'll pass the gavel, if you wouldn't mind, to Jason, so Jason can go over CEQA with you.
Please, thank you.
Oh, Annie. I guess Annie will go first.
Okay. Annie, if you'd like to come up and introduce yourself for the record.
Sure. Hi, actually, my name is Ann Sergel. I'm a Vice President and Director of CEQA NEPA Services at eCore Consulting. eCore prepared the EIR for this project, and I'd like to summarize a history of the EIR and provide some comments on the agenda item exhibits as they relate to the EIR, and also provide a summary response to the late letters that were sent to the city that are in Exhibit 11 of the agenda. We also have provided our comments to the city. I have copies here for you today, but I think they have been distributed by city staff. So as described in the staff report, a similar specific plan amendment was approved by the city in 2020. The CEQA document prepared for that amendment was an addendum to the MND for the 2017 specific plan approval. This approach was coordinated with the city's community development director at the time, Rebecca Deming, and the CEQA document and supporting technical studies were reviewed by the city and the city's environmental consultant Chambers Group. After project approval, the environmental document was challenged in court by a group called SAFER, who is a regional umbrella group for construction unions. In June 2021, SAFER and Coachillin entered into a settlement agreement that nullified the 2020 adoption of the specific plan amendment approvals and their supporting CEQA document. The settlement agreement required that an EIR be prepared, circulated, and considered by the city prior to approval of the project, which was defined as the proposed specific plan amendment. The approvals from the original specific plan from 2017 were not nullified and remain in force. This is important because it establishes that the full development of the 2017 specific plan is the no project or the baseline for the analysis of impacts for this project, which is the amendment to the specific plan that is before you today. eCore was hired to prepare the EIR. We have been on the city's list of approved environmental consultants since 2015, and we have completed CEQA documentation and technical studies for 18 projects in the city for applicants and 3 projects, third-party review services directly for the city for 3 projects. The city requires that the applicant prepare any environmental studies and CEQA documents as part of the city application requirements. eCore assisted Coachillin in finalizing its CEQA document for the 2017 approval and also prepared the 2020 CEQA document, so we are familiar with the project site and the general requirements for the city. eCore and the applicant coordinated extensively with the city and their environmental consultant Chambers Group to ensure that the EIR and technical studies meet the city's requirements and accurately reflect the environmental impacts of this specific plan amendment. In March 2021, prior to the final settlement agreement, eCore requested input from then Community Development Director Brian Swanson on the technical studies and CEQA document format that the city would like to see after the settlement. At that time, it was thought that a document tiered from the original specific plan CEQA document would be required. eCore sent Mr. Swanson the full environmental record for the project, including the Riverside County environmental documents, the 2017 CEQA document that tiered from the Riverside County document, and a draft of a potential idea for a CEQA document that tiered from the 2017 CEQA document. After sending this email, we were notified by phone that the city preferred to hold their input on the CEQA approach until the settlement was finalized. At the end of June 2021, after the settlement agreement was finalized, eCore was contacted by Juan Carrillo, the new Community Development Director, requesting copies of the documents sent to Mr. Swanson, which we supplied on that same day. On July 8, 2021, eCore and the applicant met with Mr. Carrillo and other city staff regarding the scope of the EIR. At this meeting, it was determined that the EIR would not be a tiered document and that a separate EIR would be prepared to cover the proposed project, which is the specific plan amendment or the proposed changes to the specific plan. On July 22, 2021, eCore city planning staff and staff from the city's environmental consultant Chambers Group met to discuss the scope of the EIR, including topics such as baseline, cumulative impacts, what resources should be included, and what alternatives should be included. Specifically, it was decided that an initial study would be used to narrow the resources discussed in detail in the EIR to those resources that had the potential for a significant impact: air quality, energy, greenhouse gas emissions, noise, and traffic. It was also reemphasized that the baseline condition is the approved specific plan because the 2017 specific plan approvals are still in force. Therefore, the EIR would evaluate the delta between the 2017 approved specific plan and the proposed changes in the specific plan amendment. The effects of the entire specific plan would be evaluated as a cumulative impact. On July 22, 2021, the draft notice of preparation and initial study was submitted to the city for review. Based on comments from Chambers Group, biological resources was added as a resource to discuss in detail in the EIR due to the potential for comments from the union group SAFER. The scoping period was held from August 3rd to September 2nd, 2021. The scoping comment letters were received from the city on September 13 from Mitchell Sy, attorney for the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Native American Heritage Commission. On August 23, 2021, an internal draft EIR and technical studies for air quality, greenhouse gas, energy, noise, and traffic were provided to the city for review. Between September 2021 and April 2022, ECOR prepared 4 review drafts of the EIR. Each of these drafts were reviewed by Chambers Group. ECOR met with the city staff and/or Chambers Group 3 times to review comments and revisions to the EIR. One of these meetings included the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to discuss how their scoping letter comments would be addressed in the EIR. During the revisions, ECOR also worked to ensure that the biological resources and indoor air quality issues identified during SAFER's original CEQA challenge were addressed. It should be noted that the EIR's impact assessment methods, impact significance threshold, and conclusions and mitigation measures were all developed during this time in consultation with and reviewed by the city and their environmental consultant. The city released the EIR for public and agency review from April 13, 2022 to May 28, 2022. Comment letters were received from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, California Highway Patrol, and there were 2 separate letters from SAFER. Between August 5th and August 17th, 2022, ECOR responded to 2 rounds of review of the final EIR by Chambers Group. The final EIR was also reviewed by the applicant's CEQA attorney, Jason Ackerman. The final EIR contains copies of the comments and responses to comments, minor changes to the draft EIR, and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. The final EIR files were requested by city planning staff and provided by ECOR on August 25th, and both the draft and final EIR are in your agenda packet. I have a few comments on the agenda item attachment Exhibit 11. I would just like to note that the letters contained in Exhibit 11, which is entitled All Comment Letters for the Project, do not represent all of the comment letters received on the project. As I noted previously, one of the comment letters dated April 25th, 2022, from Mitchell Sy, attorney from the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters, is a comment letter for a different project, tract map number 22-2, subdivision of a 7.65 acre parcel into 2 parcel. This item was approved by the Planning Commission on April 25th, 2022, as not part of the proposed project or the agenda item before you today. For the EIR for this project, the city received 3 scoping letters and 4 letters on the draft EIR during the public comment period. Copies of these letters are provided in Appendix A of the draft EIR and in the final EIR Section 3, but are not included in Exhibit 11. 4 comments were received by the city outside of the draft EIR comment period, 3 from Mission Springs Water District and 1 from SAFER. These letters are provided in Exhibit 11. After we received the letters that came after the draft EIR comment period closed, we provided written responses to the city yesterday. I'd like to quickly summarize those, but you do have copies of our written response in your packet. Mission Springs Water District sent 3 letters to the city after the close of the draft EIR comment period. On October 18, 2022, the city forwarded a late comment letter from the Mission Springs Water District. ECOR and the applicant's engineer provided a preliminary response on October 24th and a detailed response, with project-specific water and wastewater calculations on December 12th. The comment letter specifically questioned the analysis in the initial study prepared during the scoping of the EIR, which concluded that the hotel and amphitheater uses would have a similar water demand and wastewater flow would be similar to the general commercial land uses evaluated in the water supply assessment prepared for the original specific plan approvals in 2017. In response to this letter, the applicant's engineer, NV5, prepared more detailed calculations for the specific plan amendment. Their calculations found that water use and wastewater flow for the proposed specific plan amendment would actually be slightly less than the original general commercial land uses from the 2017 water supply assessment. Therefore, the initial study's analysis that replacement of the approved land uses with the proposed land uses would result in similar water use and wastewater generation was valid. The city's agenda packet also includes 2 additional letters from MSWD to the city dated November 21st and December 14th. These letters do not appear to have been forwarded to the applicant. However, the comments in these letters are similar to MSWD's October 18 letter in that the district does not recognize that the proposed project is a replacement of approved uses from the 2017 specific plan, and that the approved uses are included in the city's 2020 general plan and the district's 2020 regional urban water management plan. The impact of the specific plan amendment is the change from the approved land use. As described previously, the water use and wastewater flow would actually be slightly less than what was approved in 2017. SAFER submitted a late comment letter to the city on December 16th, which was forwarded to the applicant on December 19th. The comment letter refers to the comments the city received in 2 letters from SAFER on the draft EIR. These comments were adequately addressed in the responses to comments in the final EIR, which is included in your agenda packet. These responses were reviewed by the city's environmental consultant, as well as the applicant's CEQA attorney. An additional response letter was provided to the city earlier today. The SAFER letter requests additional analysis and recirculation of the EIR as described in the final EIR, and then the response to this late comment, none of the additional information provided in the comment responses requires circulation of the EIR. And now it's Jason Ackerman's turn.
Okay, Mr. Ackerman, if you'd step up to the podium and state your name for the record, please, then you may continue.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Jason Ackerman. As mentioned earlier, I am a land use attorney for the applicant. I've been a CEQA practitioner for more than 20 years. In the process of counseling the applicant on this project, I reviewed the environmental impact report, the comment letters. As Annie has indicated, I participated in preparing responses to comments to ensure legal sufficiency. Reviewed the findings supporting the approval recommendation. And as described earlier, there's been a considerable amount of effort put into this project to ensure that it is done correctly, that it is legally sufficient, and it is a legally defensible document. It is my opinion, and I've reached the conclusion that it is legally defensible. It complies with the California Public Resources Code as well as the state CEQA guidelines, which guide you in making your decision. And the findings supporting the recommendation are indeed supported by substantial evidence in the record. So with that, I will conclude my remarks and be available for comments when appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Is there anyone else for the applicant that would like to speak at this time? Okay, at this moment, we will go ahead and take public testimony for anyone in favor of. Is there any? Okay, seeing none, is there any public testimony from anyone opposed? Okay, if you could please step up to the podium and state your name for the record.
Absolutely. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Brad Hackla. I'm from the law firm of the Hackla Law Group, and we represent multiple clients at the Coachillin Canna Business Park, specifically Happy Hours LLC, who's the owner of Parcel 10, DHS Lot 11 Holdings, who's the owner of Parcel 11, Moonlev Investments, who is the owner of Parcel 12, and DHS Verde LLC, who's the owner of Parcel number 28. If this Commission is inclined to do anything other than reject this request and to amend the specific plan today, first and foremost, we would request additional time, as approximately 1,500 pages plus were issued in the staff report last Friday, approximately 2 business days for us to analyze. The staff report concerning this meeting is comprised of more than 1,500 pages, and to our knowledge, the city hasn't published or otherwise made accessible that report to anybody before. So we believe with the potential detrimental effect that this amended specific plan could have to our clients as well as to other parcel owners within the Coachillin Canna Business Park, that it would be necessary to engage in a full and accurate review of it to determine what detrimental effects it would have. All of our clients in this bought into this park on the basis of the specific plan that is presently in place. 2 of our clients actually hired the developer to construct their properties in compliance with the CCRs and the specific plan. Each of our clients has and continues to want to be good partners with the city in this. However, at this time, it is our belief, and I believe as the staff report pointed out, the developers failed to adhere to the present specific plan. It would be significantly prejudicial to the parcel owners and our clients within the Coachillin Canna Business Park if this commission decides to approve the proposed amendments and changes to the present specific plan. To begin, the developers failed to comply with its obligations requirements under the current plan. In fact, as set forth within the staff report, there are presently 23 open code violations against Coachillin Holdings, the developer of this cannabis business park. The present specific plan mandates that the developer construct and install an on-site temporary septic system to service the operating parcels until such time that Mission Springs Water District comes online with its permanent sewage facility. Despite this specific requirement, the developer has failed to ever construct such sewage system. According to past comments made on behalf of the developer has already completed all the common infrastructure to service the development, and yet the developer has refused and is continuing to refuse to dedicate all such common infrastructure over to the POA of the development. All while the POA has been and continues to try to charge each of the parcel owners, including our clients within the development, significant monetary assessments for the upkeep and maintenance of the infrastructure that the developer is keeping in its own possession. The perimeter fence is another issue. This has been completed and paid for by our clients and other parcel owners within the development. Somehow the developer has stated that it has retained title of this fence and is thereby refusing to dedicate this fence to be an asset of the POA. All while the POA is presently going through bankruptcy proceedings and declaring that the value of its liabilities exceed the value of its assets. In fact, through bankruptcy proceedings, the POA has declared that it does not have any tangible assets. As such, should the city now actually approve the amendments for which the developer is now seeking, the city will knowingly be allowing the developer to not comply with its very own imposed construction, development, and financial obligations, and essentially thereby bail out and relieve the developer of such obligations, despite the developer previously using all such obligations as a sales pitch to each of our clients to induce our parcel owners to purchase parcels of land within the Coachillin Canna Business Park and at significantly inflated purchase prices. In essence, should the commission now recommend approval, the city will effectively be complicit in allowing the developer to knowingly fail to comply with its legally imposed obligations and thereby cause significant damages to the parcel owners within the Coachillin Canna Business Park. There's numerous lawsuits already pending against the developer. While the city may presently be unaware, please be advised that a number of civil lawsuits have already been filed and commenced against the developer of the Coachillin Canna Business Park, as well as against other numerous individuals and parties that are related to the developer, in part due to the developer's failure to properly adhere to its requirements and obligations set forth within the present specific plan, as well as for a significant number of fraudulent misrepresentations to our clients. It was not until the developer had to deal with all these civil lawsuits, the developer is now seeking the city's assistance to change all of its legally mandated obligations, most likely due to the developer seeking the city's assistance to potentially relieve it from liability in these pending civil actions. This is also an effort to go back on its financial obligations, as the specific plan requires a number of items to be specifically and solely handled by the developer. Basically, all giving the developer a vehicle to attempt to unlawfully purge these monies from our client now, based under the terms of the proposed amended specific plan. Thus, the motives and timing of all these proposed amendments call into question the true purpose of these amendments, other than the developer merely attempting to save itself from significant legal and financial liabilities, all while requesting that the city help it in this process. We strongly encourage the Commission to review the pleadings in each of our pending lawsuits against the developer prior to submitting this matter for a vote. Should the Commission do so, you will see numerous claims based upon fraud and other claims based upon the parties' failures to properly adhere to the requirements under the specific plan, other development documents, as well as the POA's CC&Rs, which are recorded and run with land. Some of the issues that we think specifically with the proposed amendments. Security. As the city correctly notes in its staff report, despite park-wide security being an obligation of the developer and the POA, the developer and POA have discontinued any efforts to provide security to the park. As such, it is the belief of the parcel owners that the developer, whose members also comprise the POA board, are intentionally causing the park to be placed in default of its legal obligations in order to significantly impact parcel owners' business operations. In this respect, in the revised specific plan that's being proposed, the developer is now attempting to place a significant financial burden on all parcel owners to provide their own individual security services in order to remain compliant with applicable laws. These additional obligations and significant additional cost were never contemplated by the parcel owners when choosing to acquire their parcels of land within the park. The Property Owners Association. The revised specific plan appears to essentially dismantle the POA in its entirety, which will cause significant detriment upon the park. First and foremost, the POA is supposed to be an enforcement arm of the development. By dismantling the POA, there will effectively be no enforcement arm. Second, the POA is supposed to be responsible for managing and properly maintaining all common areas. By dismantling the POA, it is uncertain how this will be maintained, or by who, or by what monies. Third, it is presently unknown what the purpose of the POA will even be should the revised specific plan be approved, all of which will cause absolute uncertainty and damage to the parcel owners within the development, as the developer will essentially be allowed to try to impose whatever obligations it wants to impose. Also, as I mentioned before, there are already recorded CC&Rs with the development that run with the land. Thus, it is presently unknown if the developer is suggesting that the CC&Rs will be eliminated or if those will remain and the parcel owners will still be bound by all such rules. Sewage. The present specific plan mandates that the developer construct and install an on-site temporary septic facility to service the park until such time that Mission Springs Water District completes its construction of its permanent sewage facility. In the revised specific plan, the developer is requesting that the city approve its use of its off-site, rather elaborate sewage treatment facility instead of a basic on-site temporary septic facility that was represented and promised to the parcel owners. While the city may be unaware, the developer has engaged in significant efforts for the greater part of the last year or so to try to force and coerce all the parcel owners to agree to the use and engagement of a developer's elaborate and over-the-top off-site sewage treatment facility. In doing so, the developer has demanded that parcel owners enter into its take-it-or-leave-it off-site wastewater treatment and disposal connection agreement, which mandates that the parcel owners do all of the following. 1, grant a series of easements and other property rights over the respective parcels of land to the developer which were never previously contemplated and are otherwise agreed upon. 2, pay the developer in excess of $104,000 in connection fees and a security deposit even though the infrastructure has already been paid for by the parcel owners and is already connected. 3, pay monthly fees that are set by the developer. In inquiring what these monthly fees would be for sewage use, the developer has stated that such fees will most likely exceed $60,000 per month. Thus, if the city approves this revised specific plan, the parcel owners will effectively be left with the decision of paying the developer all such additional monies in order to remain operational, or shutting down its business as it will not be able to effectively operate without sewage. Stormwater runoff and collection, or the SWPPP. The proposed revisions in the specific plan as relating to the stormwater runoff and collection are of serious concern to the property owners. First, under the present requirements, it has been approved that a collection basin would be allowed and has been constructed for the purpose of collecting stormwater runoff without the need of parcel owners to build their improvements and buildings upon their parcel of land with a 20% setback. It is presently believed that under the revised specific plan, parcel owners, including those who have already spent millions of dollars to construct and build out the respective parcels of land, will now be required to give a 20% setback for stormwater runoff and collection. This will effectively cause parcel owners to have to destroy their present facilities and buildings to meet these requirements. Alternatively, under the revised specific plan, parcel owners will now graciously be provided the opportunity by the developer to opt in and participate in a park-wide plan for stormwater runoff, whereby it is easily foreseeable and anticipated the developer will attempt to charge all parcel owners significant amounts of monies to participate in this plan. What those monies are, we have no idea. This will again effectively lead to the termination of business operations from within the park. Amenities. Lastly, in the present specific plan, the developer was and continues to be required to construct a number of specifically identified amenities. For example, the developer was and continues to be required to build out a security tactical operations center, bunkhouse, and armory. Under the revised specific plan, not only is the developer requesting that the city relieve it of its obligations to construct a significant number of the required amenities, but it also appears the developer is stating that its obligations to construct the amenities is now on a market condition basis, meaning the developer will not actually have to develop any of the amenities. Please note, not only were the requisite amenities the basis of the developer's representations and fraudulent inducements for the parcel owners to purchase the parcels of land within the development at an increased price, but the developer's failure to actually construct these amenities is the basis of pending legal actions against the developer. As such, the developer again is merely seeking the city's assistance to potentially relieve it from significant liability, which has already resulted in a civil judgment being imposed against the developer, as well as Mr. Dickerson himself, in an amount of more than $1.5 million. In sum, while each of our clients who are parcel owners within the development certainly can see the benefits of allowing there to be mixed uses within the development of the properties, the significantly overblown wholesale revisions and amendments to the development specific plan and the developer's obligations relating thereto need to be denied in order to protect the parcel owners within the development, including those who have already spent millions of dollars in building out and developing their respective parcels of land in accordance with what the current plans and development documents are. We'd like to thank the Commission for each of its members for your time, and we appreciate your anticipated consideration for this. And if you have any questions, we will be available. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, is there any other testimony from any one of the public opposed? Please state your name for the record.
Good evening, Rebecca Davis, on behalf of Supporters Alliance for Environmental Responsibility. As detailed in the written comments that we submitted, the EIR is inadequate and violates CEQA in numerous ways. Tonight, I want to touch on just a few of the issues that we raised in our letter. First, CEQA requires that EIRs analyze a reasonable range of alternatives to the proposed project that would reduce significant environmental impacts. Yet here, the EIR only analyzes one single alternative, which is a no-project alternative. We suggested in our comments on the draft EIR that the city analyze the impacts of a less intensive alternative that either reduces the capacity of the hotel and the amphitheater or that reduces the number of events that are held there. This alternative would reduce the vehicle trips associated with the project and would significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In response to our comment, the final EIR claims it didn't need to analyze this alternative because the no-project alternative is somehow equivalent to the reduced intensity alternative we suggested. But there's no explanation for how the currently allowable cannabis cultivation uses are equivalent to a less intensive hotel and amphitheater use. And there's a clear middle ground between not constructing the project at all and constructing and operating an amphitheater and a hotel in a way that would reduce the significant greenhouse gas impacts. Now, case law is clear on this. Courts will reject and have repeatedly rejected an EIR's analysis if it omits discussion of an alternative that is significantly different from the alternatives that are discussed in an EIR, and that would both reduce significant impacts and achieve most of the project's objectives, and fails to include a reasonable explanation of the decision to exclude it. And that's exactly the situation we have here. In addition, since the EIR concludes that the project will have significant and unavoidable greenhouse gas impacts, the city is required to adopt a less intensive alternative unless there's substantial evidence that such an alternative is infeasible, and here we have no such evidence. A reduced intensity alternative should have been analyzed in the EIR, and its absence renders the EIR legally deficient. Second, the mitigation that the FEIR or the EIR relies on to find air quality impacts to be less than significant are entirely speculative. Mitigation measure AQ3 says that during an event at the amphitheater, the event organizer will provide a charter shuttle bus service with a single pickup location in downtown Palm Springs, and that at least 25% of the tickets sold for events must include the cost of a shuttle or rideshare. According to the EIR, 25% of attendees will use these shuttles or rideshare services, and therefore this measure will reduce significant ROG emissions below the significance threshold. While we don't think this measure is bad in any way, there's no evidence that it's sufficient to reduce impacts to less than significant. First, there's no way to ensure that an event attendee whose ticket includes the shuttle or rideshare costs will not actually drive to the venue. Second, taking a rideshare rather than a personal vehicle does nothing to reduce emissions at all. In addition, the Commission should strongly consider whether Coachillin can be trusted to actually implement this mitigation when the time comes. As discussed in the staff report and with the previous speaker, the developer has yet to prove themselves able to abide by the terms and conditions that the city has imposed in the past, and there's no reason to believe they will do so in the future. The city should not rely on an unverifiable reduction in emissions to be implemented by the applicant, who is also unreliable, in order to conclude that impacts to air quality are less than significant. There are also additional mitigation measures and options available that have not been analyzed to further reduce ROG emissions and greenhouse gas impacts, including, for example, requiring shuttle stops at more than a single location, restricting the number of parking spaces, and requiring pre-registration for those spaces, just to name a few. And finally, the staff report includes a requirement that the applicant develop a transportation management plan prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy. The EIR never mentions this transportation management plan, and to the extent that the plan is meant to reduce the project's impacts on traffic or air quality, the plan has to be included in the EIR to properly disclose all mitigation measures. So this would allow the public to have an opportunity to review it and to provide comment, and is required by CEQA. So to conclude, we request that you refrain from recommending approval of this project or certification of the EIR, and instead require staff to revise the EIR and recirculate it to address these legal inadequacies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Is there anyone else from the public who is opposed to this development moving forward? Please step to the podium and state your name for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Paul Jacobson. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I represent the owners of Parcel 11 inside the project. First and foremost, I'd like to reiterate that time to review this revised specific plan is needed. I've barely had an opportunity to crack it open, and it's 1,500 pages. I take it very seriously, and I want to really read through it. I read the first few pages of the staff's review and recommendation. There are a lot of concerns. My attorney, I can't speak as comprehensively to them as he did, but mostly I want to get what I purchased in that building from the developer, and upon some very initial review and the staff's recommendation, it seems like a lot of that stuff is changing. I feel like the POA is important. He wants to do away with it, or at least make it irrelevant. The perimeter wall, I paid money into that through the POA, and if I don't get the benefit to run my business from that wall, I don't even know how I would recreate things on my own parcel to be compliant without it. I number one, just again to reiterate, I really just want time to review it and make sure I thoroughly understand it. I'm not opposed to change. I'm definitely in support of the city. I want to make sure that everyone is successful, but I also want to protect my own investment and what we've built. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jacobson. Is there any other members of the public who wish to speak in opposition of this item? Please state your name for the record.
Hi. Thank you for letting me speak here. Maddie Cooper, represent Lot 10 inside the Coachillin Canna Business Park. I want to echo what PJ just came up and said. We are absolutely needing more time to thoroughly review the documents set forth in the 1,500 pages at the very bare minimum. Secondly, also want to point out we are open to change and working with the city and the developer and everyone for mutual benefit of all parties. That's our ultimate goal. The third most important part for our group, and I think everyone that's purchased property there or built buildings, operating businesses, we have spent $18 million to build this building, almost $7 million operating our business. And some of the changes proposed in the documentation, as I understand them, would severely impact our potential capabilities to operate business, and that would be detrimental, obviously, to our investment and everything that we've put into this thus far. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper, for your time. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak in opposition of this item? If you'd please state your name for the record, sir. Thank you.
Jace Levine. I represent Parcel 12 of Coachillin and Moonlev Investments. I'm also the CEO of the Levine and Leeds Corporation, which operates out of Parcel 12. We have 30 employees, full-time employees. We've been operating since September of 2020. These are members of your community. Our director of operations grew up in Desert Hot Springs. My director of cultivation lives in Desert Hot Springs. I eat at Dillon's twice a week. These people work very hard, and they've been working very hard for a very long time. Beyond the $16 million that we have invested in this community, we face a lot of struggles in the cannabis space. We have a volatile market that we're dealing with constantly. But if we're forced to pay these additional fees, if I have to pay $107,000 to hook up to a sewer or a temporary sewer system that was initially required by the developer to provide us, we're going to go out of business, like plain and simple. It's just we're not going to be able to survive. And I'm not opposed to change. I would love to see the development built out. I really would. I mean, it is the vision for Coachillin is why we're here. We looked all over the state for places to build, and we settled on Desert Hot Springs because of the vision for this park, because of the specific plan. Because when we met with city officials, we saw that the city was extremely friendly towards cannabis and extremely friendly towards business. And we have a great working relationship with the city, the mayor's office, all the members of the city's office. And it would be a shame. It would be very, very sad to let all of our staff go and to lose our investment, of course. But, beyond that, I think I again would agree with Ms. Cooper and Mr. Jacobson that we would need more time to analyze this. But I think approving the specific plan in its current form has the potential to put us all out of business for the people that have built in that park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak in opposition of this item? Please state your name for the record, sir.
John Teet, you're going to need a spelling, T-I-E-D-T, and it's great to see you. Well, good evening. I represent J&H Capital Holding, and we don't have a lawsuit against the developer. We want to see the project succeed. We want to see all the property owners succeed. But I received that 1,500-page document. It's probably worth a lot more than that. But I saw it, and it had me concerned. I'm the counsel for the company for a lot, and we're on lot 5. I have some concerns about my client's ability to afford some of the costs or expenses in the future. We would just like additional time, respectfully, to have our consultant look at the report and evaluate it. We want to make sure that we don't run into financial ruin or a lawsuit down the line, so I think we need to retain the appropriate experts to evaluate it. And I want to thank you very much for all the time that you put in this report, but we need to put some time into this report too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teat. Is there any other members of the public who would like to speak in opposition of this item? If you could please state your name for the record, sir.
Trevor Leeds. I am a partner in Levine and Leeds Corporation, which is the operating entity of Lot 12. I also have sat as a owner's rep in one form or fashion for lots 11 and 12, and on occasion for Lot 10. I was involved as the owner's rep through the entire construction of lots 11 and 12, spent thousands of hours, countless telephone calls, emails with the developer as our general contractor. And I served on the Property Owners Association board within the POA for 2 years. I can't tell you how many times the specific plan and the CC&Rs of the POA were referenced in the years that I have worked with the developer. When we completed construction of Lot 11 and 12, it was our understanding that the specific plan had been revised and approved, then rejected because of the lawsuit. And the only remaining thing that the developer was doing was to make adjustments to the environmental impact report. Surprisingly, now almost a year plus later, and many POA meetings and emails, not a single property owner was notified by the developer about some of these wholesale changes to specifically the Property Owners Association and the gutting of the requirements that the developer was to provide to us as property owners. As many of my colleagues have already stated, we just received the document for the first time on Thursday evening, Friday morning. It's 1,500 pages. We, even with a team of 10 people, have not been able to pour through it and fully review it. So at a minimum, I would request, that you guys delay a vote so that we have a chance to thoroughly review and submit comments. If you're adamant to cast a vote tonight, I would strongly recommend that, for all the reasons that our attorney and all of my colleagues have stated, that you reject it in its current form. I do want to reiterate, and I've spoken to many property owners, many of them call me. Again, I was on the POA board. I think almost to a T, the property owners are certainly open to change. We have a great relationship with the city. We want this project to succeed individually and as a whole. We want the city to succeed. I think we're totally open to expanding the uses of the park. Makes total sense. Brings tax revenue and jobs and other things to the community. But the wholesale changes to the Property Owners Association and the requirements of the developer, as my partner Jace has stated, would put us out of business. So I thank you for your time, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other members of the public who wish to speak in opposition of this item? Please state your name for the record, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Ostrowski. I am part of the Hackle Law Group as well, counsel for parcel owners 10, 11, 12, and 28. I'll be very brief here. I know my colleague Brad Hackla basically touched on all the topics. However, I did just want to make a quick note and mention of what Mr. Dickerson said earlier today. What he said earlier today was this was, quote, nothing more than just a quick revision to a specific plan, merely a specific plan amendment to approve a hotel and amphitheater. As the city correctly points out in its staff report, it's not true. Not true at all. It's a complete wholesale revision of the developer's requirements that, as you just heard each of our clients talk to, they've spent in excess of 18 plus million on each of them to get in there and develop this property in accordance with the present requirements, which the developer himself was the general contractor for 2 of those projects and built the project in accordance with the specific plan. The wholesale revisions are going to put him out of business. This needs to be rejected. Needs to be rejected, plain and simple. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak in opposition of this item? Please state your name for the record, sir.
Good evening. My name is Keith Smith.
and I represent the lot owners of lots 13 and 18 in the project. My colleagues have covered a lot of the issues that are plaguing this project and what are frustrating the various lot owners, including my clients. But I think what you hear is the emotion that's involved in this project and how bad the lot owners want this project to succeed, not fail. But what's being proposed to this body is an amendment to the plan which will make this project fail. And I don't think anybody wants that, certainly not my clients, and certainly not any of the lot owners. What you saw and you've seen from the documentation, including the multiple lawsuits that are at issue in this project, including my clients who are parties to those lawsuits. There are claims against Mr. Dickerson, his companies, and this POA itself for allegations of fraud, misrepresentations, breach of fiduciary duty, conflicts of interest. All of those things are at issue in this project. And what, through some wholesale redlining of a specific plan to carve out some language that completely removes and absolves a POA, that is the critical premise of why so many lot owners bought into this project. They could have bought anywhere. They could have bought their own land and developed their projects. But what they did was buy into this project. And why did they do so? Because they bought into this project based upon the specific plan that was approved here, that dedicated the property and had requirements for management and ownership and cost sharing and CC&Rs that were recorded against title, that run with title and bind the developer and bind the POA and equally bind the lot owners. But what is being attempted to be done here with this amended specific plan is to undermine all of that and throw this project into chaos and allow the developer to run this project as they deem fit without a POA, without a central management, and it is a grave concern for my clients who own 2 lots in this project. And I would echo the request from the other colleagues who have spoken tonight, that if it is this body's decision to make a decision tonight, I would request that it deny the request to amend the plan, or in the alternative, provide additional time to review it and see how this plan will fully and actually impact our clients. Certainly you have a series of lawyers in this room, including myself, who have spent a considerable amount of time in the last 48 hours trying to review the mountain of documents. I can't tell you I understand all of it, but I think what at a minimum should be allowed is for people like my clients to have the opportunity to read it, understand it, and then voice their opinion on it. But what we can see so far is all this will do is have a significant detrimental impact. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to speak to you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak in opposition of this item? Okay. If you could step up and state your name for the record, sir.
Good evening. My name is Eric Weck. I'm the engineering manager for Mission Springs Water District. This project would certainly bring some revenue and some growth to the city, and the district fully 100% supports that. Our comments really are focused on some of the technical details such as wastewater flow, water demand, things like that. And although there has been some information provided to the district through the planning department from ECOR, we took a look at the 1,500-page document, and we similarly request that some additional time be provided so that we can digest that information. Specifically, the district is interested in seeing some peak flows as a result of events at the amphitheater. And when there's an event there, usually there is a peak water demand flow as well as wastewater. And in looking through some of our correspondence with ECOR, we were unable to find that information. Don't construe this as a negative or what Mission Springs wants to see this project fail. We want to see it succeed. It's just that we're voicing our concerns over some of the data that's been provided. That concludes the district's comments, and again, we fully support this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other members of the public who wish to speak in opposition of this item? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak from the public in a neutral position on this item? Okay, there are none. We will get back to the applicant for rebuttal, but it is currently 7:05. I'm going to recess us for 15 minutes for everyone to be able to use the facilities. We will reconvene at 7:20 p.m. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It is 7:20 PM. We will go ahead and reconvene the special meeting of the Planning Commission, Tuesday, December 20th, 2022. We are currently at the opportunity for applicant rebuttal. If the applicant would like to come up to the podium, introduce themselves, you're more than welcome at this time, sir.
Going to do this in series, if you don't mind, Chairman. We'll start with rebuttal from NV5, and then ECOR, and then CEQA attorney, and then I'll finish, if that'll work for you.
Very good, sir. Thank you very much. When you step up to the podium, please state your name for the record.
Matthew Renaud with NV5. There were a couple items that were brought up that I'd like to address for factual consistency. There was a statement made by the parcel 10, 11, and 12 and 28 attorney about an on-site waste treatment system requirement being made. There is an installed and operating wastewater treatment system for the park. The term on-site, which has been utilized as a point of contention, is a State Water Resources Control Board terminology differentiating a publicly operated treatment works treatment system versus a private operating treatment system. It is not a geographical location requirement. So when the operating system, which is WDR Order R7 2020-0029 of a properly permitted operating waste discharge treatment system that the developer has installed, meets the requirements of that. So I just want to put that on the record that there is no issue with an on-site, off-site of geography. That is a terminology of permitting of who the operating entity is. So I hope that can clear that issue up. There was a statement made regarding stormwater. Nothing that is presented changes any of the requirements within the water quality management plan that was developed and implemented to the project. The sizing of the water quality infiltration and stormwater runoff mitigation is within that water quality management plan, to which covers the entirety of the parcel park, is more than sufficient to handle any and all development of impervious lands. It's been overdeveloped. It has more than sufficient capacity within that design for any impervious, which I don't think there's any actually additional impervious areas being designed into this that was originally calculated. But that whole permit is still in compliance and there's no change there. There was a comment from MSWD regarding waste flow, peak flow issues. NV5 has done an analysis of the potential water demand and waste flow for the design change, for the specific plan change request. And there's actually a decrease calculation in the amount of water demand and a drop in the overall waste flow demand based on the land changes for the three parcels. But just from our calculations, to get just overview technical, we have an assumed 4 gallon per day wastewater flow calculation per occupant of the amphitheater of 5,000 people. So that would be a 20,000 gallon per day flow during an event, which at a 1.5 million gallon per day wastewater treatment system has adequate capacity to handle that over a multiple hour per day event. That's just the way that they're designed to handle those types of flows. It is not a significant, you're talking 20,000 gallons out of 1.5 million gallon per day design. And lastly, I kept hearing it's been a lot of, we haven't had time to read it, but it's going to be detrimental. When I do my review of permits and documents, I always make sure I understand it before I know how it impacts me, before I render a decision on how it will impact me publicly. It's kind of counterintuitive, but, so those are the facts on the water and the wastewater side, and appreciate if there's any other questions, I'll be available.
Thank you very much. The next person for the applicant, if you could please come back up, state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Ann Sturgill from eCart Consulting again. I'd just like to address a couple of the comments that the representative from SAFER brought up for the EIR. I'd also like to point out that during the preparation of the EIR, the applicant reached out to SAFER more than 10 times with no response to try and address their concerns. Their concerns were submitted for the draft EIR. These comments were addressed in the final EIR Section 3, and then we provided additional response to the letter that they submitted earlier this week. The first comment was that the EIR fails to analyze a reasonable range of alternatives. This comment states that a reasonable range of alternatives was not analyzed in the EIR, and that a less intensive development alternative, specifically with a smaller hotel or amphitheater project, should be analyzed. This comment was in SAFER's May 27, 2022 comment letter on the draft EIR, and it is responded to in the final EIR Section 3 response to comment 3-4. As stated, an EIR must not consider every conceivable alternative, but rather a reasonable range of alternatives should be considered that would substantially lessen or avoid the project's significant impacts. As described in Section 5.1 of the draft EIR, 4 alternatives were considered in the EIR process, including the no project alternative, which would develop the specific plan area using the uses in the approved specific plan. Response to comment 3-4 provides substantial evidence that a smaller amphitheater and hotel alternative would not avoid or substantially reduce the cumulative greenhouse gas impact when compared to the South Coast Air Quality Management District's threshold. And this, they also stated that the EIR relies on a speculative mitigation measure to conclude that cumulative air quality impacts are less than significant to reactive organic gases related to mitigation measure air quality 3, which is the rideshare mitigation. This comment was also included in SAFER's May 27, 2022 comment letter on the draft EIR and is addressed in the final EIR Section 3 response to comment 3-6. The comment response shows that mitigation measure air quality 3 is feasible and provides a conservative estimate of a reduction of air emission, which is supported by substantial evidence. The comment further stated that Coachillin cannot be trusted to implement the mitigation measure when the time comes. The purpose of the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, as provided in Section 5 of the draft EIR and as before you today, is to ensure compliance with the CEQA mitigation. Additionally, the specific plan and the city's conditions of approval for the specific plan amendment require special use event permits for each event at the amphitheater. The special use event permit provides an additional opportunity for the city to ensure compliance with mitigation measures associated with amphitheater operation, including mitigation measure air quality 3. The commenter also discussed a traffic management plan. The traffic management plan is a requirement for each event in the specific plan. It is not a mitigation measure in the EIR. The EIR identified a worst-case scenario for traffic. It's true that a traffic management plan could potentially additionally reduce impacts, but credit was not taken for this traffic management impact. The traffic management plan impacts are mostly due for congestion-related impacts, which are less than significant after mitigation in the EIR.
Thank you very much. And your next representative. Again, please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jason Ackerman, Ackerman Law. I want to mention that I heard a lot of comments related to unfair surprise and inability to review the documents that have been presented in the agenda packet. There's been no intent by the applicant or the city to obfuscate this project. Pursuant to the Public Resources Code and State CEQA guidelines, the environmental impact report and its technical studies and all that supporting documentation was published on April 13th, 2022 for a 45-day review period. And that prompted a number of comments on the project and the document itself. Moreover, the city properly noticed the agenda for this meeting, and so there is full compliance with the rules and the laws applicable to notification to members of the community, and as such, a decision on this project should not be delayed. Moreover, I heard comments concerning economic damages and economic injury. And this is not the appropriate forum for really kind of getting into those issues. There are forums that evidently these commenters are pursuing. There was some testimony that civil actions are being pursued. That's the appropriate forum for remedying those kind of actions, not asking the Planning Commission to intervene in a dispute between litigants. So with that, I thank you for your time and am available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. May we have the next representative, please?
Last but certainly not least, Kenny Dickerson, and I am the managing member and founder of Coachillin Holdings. Wow, that's a lot of headwind. And I'm really glad they all showed up. I appreciate their input, although I wholeheartedly and completely disagree with their findings. If we turn to the resolution to deny, this is the document I want to read, and I'm sorry, I apologize in advance because this is detailed and long. For reference, excerpts from 2017 and 2019 approved and governing docs. 2017 specific plan stated on page 44 of 131 of the CLEAN document, the Coachillin development will provide internal private security on a contract basis administered and/or approved by the Indian Canyon and 18th Property Owners Association. The 2019 CC&Rs Section 5.1 security recorded at the county, each owner and occupant of a parcel shall be responsible for their own personal safety and security of their property in the parcels. The association may, but shall not be obligated to maintain or support certain activities within the association designed to make the parcels safer than they otherwise might be. Neither the association, the original declarant, nor the successor declarant shall in any way be considered insurers or guarantors of security or safety within the parcels, nor shall any of them be held liable for any loss or damage by reason of failure to provide adequate security, safety, or effectiveness of security or safety measures undertaken. Each owner acknowledges, understands, and covenants to inform its occupants of its parcel that the association, its board of directors and committees declarant, any declarant-related entity, and any successor declarant are not insurers or guarantees of safety and security within the properties, and that each person using the properties assumes all risk of personal injury and loss or damage to property, including parcels and the contents of parcels resulting from the acts of third parties. Any cost incurred by the association to provide such services shall be paid by the association and shall be charged either to all parcels as a general assessment or a special assessment, or only to those certain parcels benefited thereby, as a special assessment as determined by the board in its sole and absolute discretion. In the 2017 CC&Rs, Section 14.8, declarants' rights and duties assignable. After the formation of the association, the declarant at its sole discretion may assign any and all contracts and agreements pertaining to the project, including without limitation any contract or agreement for the provision of security services for the project, and in the event of such assignment, the association shall accept such assignment and fully assume the obligations thereunder. In the 2017 currently approved specific plan, page 7 of 131 in the clean version, 5, security, it says the following: security will be provided in a protected compound environment behind perimeter block walls. The Coachillin specific plan security and control plan details all encompassing security provisions that cover the proposed project tenants and their products from cultivation, production, packaging, labeling, tracking, transportation to distribution to the licensed dispensaries. Security plan provisions will comply with or exceed local laws and ordinances, the California Medical and Adult Use Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, MAUCRSA, best practices from other regulated states, and guidelines set by the federal government in the 2012 Cole Memorandum. Thank you, Planning Commissioners, for agreeing and staff for agreeing to this special meeting. We appreciate your time and consideration for this project and apologize in advance for the length of this meeting, as we have a lot of issues to address that were wrongfully represented in the current findings report under the recommendation for denial. To be honest, we're quite shocked such extraneous items were included, as this clearly distracts from the matter at hand. The CEQA documentation and subsequent EIR that has been prepared and diligently worked on in tandem with staff for the incredible hotel and amphitheater we hope to bring to the city of Desert Hot Springs. I'll attempt to briefly dismantle the mountain of issues addressed in the prematurely drafted resolution for denial to hopefully give all planning commissioners peace about our project. This SP amendment only has a handful of tangible changes from the prior approved 2017 plan, contrary to what you've heard testimony about. And the most of those changes are made to simplify and streamline planning and permitting processes, i.e. removing the POA design review, which was a staff request in 2020, and removing the POA as the entity who contracts for individual property owner or operator security services. The parcel owners are still responsible for their parcel's security. The only change this SP causes is the POA does not pay upfront fees to the security provider. Each individual operator is required to contract and pay for their services directly. This misstated, quotes, "We are going to address raise extraneous issues with security in the 2017, simply demonstrate the city attorney's fundamental lack of understanding of the Coachillin business plan and related documentation." Under number 1, security issues, where it says, the 2022 specific plan does not provide an adequate security plan to prevent criminal activity and unauthorized entry into the cannabis businesses located therein and to prevent theft or unlawful trafficking of cannabis. Currently, there are cannabis cultivators within the specific plan area, and the 22 specific plan provides for inadequate security. Jennifer's words: "The Property Owners Association is no longer responsible for security of the park. The 2022 specific plan does not provide specific information on the security of common areas." See page 112 of the 155 and also 113 of 155. Our response is as follows. The POA was never responsible for the security and compliance of individual operators in the park, ever. The members of the Property Owners Association, i.e. the owners, operators of the individual parcels themselves, are responsible at all times to maintain compliance with regard to security requirements of the city and state authorities who issue their regulatory permits. In fact, the 2017 specific plan, which we are still under, on page 44 of 131 of the clean version, the Coachillin development will provide internal private security on a contract basis administered and or approved by the Indian Canyon 18th Property Owners Association. Furthermore, the city has already informed each operator they must provide their own security plan to deal with their own businesses. This new structure simply removes an unnecessary middleman, the Property Owners Association. And this is extremely important because we expect there will be many owners in the future if our park keeps growing and we keep getting businesses in there that won't need security and that aren't cannabis companies. In fact, with the current price of flower, it was very grandiose for them to say, have testimony that Coachillin and the change of the POA would be the cause of the fail of their businesses. No, I would say $400 flower prices and city taxes at $10 a square foot. Those are the contributing factors to their failing businesses, not the fact that Coachillin has a property owners association who's no longer going to pay their security bills up front. They just have to pay them themselves. The association itself is nothing more than an entity through which shared expenses can be billed to individual owners and operators in the project. It is not the only way for operators to obtain security. To say so is ludicrous. Security is a regulatory requirement at both the state and city levels, which should be shouldered by the entity that is in possession of those regulatory licenses. Nobody who is not anybody in the park who is not a cannabis operator does not want to be associated with cannabis. In fact, because of the federal illegal nature of it, you could be unwillingly putting people who are not cannabis operators in the unfortunate position of being cannabis businesses, just like you've done with Coachillin Holdings, labeling us 4 years after the 2017 specific plan was approved, coming together and forming a cannabis park regulation that we were deemed a park, and even one of the lots within the park is deemed a cannabis park. This was after we were never consulted on that, and we as Coachillin Holdings and the Property Owners Association absolutely do not want to be associated with cannabis as anything other than a landlord over somebody who is in the cannabis business. We are not plant touching, and intentionally so. And the city knew that and contemplated that in our approvals in 2017. Excuse me, let me get some water. Security, it makes no sense to require a non-cannabis business entity to obtain a cannabis regulatory license of any kind. Furthermore, the 2017 approved security plan makes no mention of the POA managing the security contract, so it's unclear as to why the city attorney or the opponents in this room would misrepresent that it did. It is even expressly outlined in the 2019 CC&Rs, which are recorded at the county, that say the following: each owner and occupant of a parcel shall be responsible for their own personal safety and security of their property in the parcels. The association may, but shall not be obligated to maintain or support certain activities within the association designed to make parcels safer than they otherwise might be. Neither the association, the original declarant, nor any successor declarant shall in any way be considered insurers or guarantors of security or safety within the parcels, nor shall any of them be held liable for any loss or damage by reason of failure to provide adequate security, safety, or ineffectiveness of security or safety measures undertaken. Each owner acknowledges, understands, and covenants to inform its occupants of its parcel that the association, its board of directors and committees, declarant, any declarant-related entity, and any successor declarant are not insurers or guarantors of safety and security within the properties, and that each person using the properties assumes all risk of personal injury and loss or damage to the property, including the parcels and contents of parcels, resulting from the acts of third parties, period. Any cost incurred by the association to provide such services shall be paid by the association and shall be charged to either to all parcels as a general assessment or to a special assessment to those certain parcels benefited thereby. Assessment as determined by the board in its sole and absolute discretion. The original 2017 CC&R state in section 14.8, declarants' rights and duties assignable. After the formation of the association, declarant, at its sole discretion, may assign any and all contracts and agreements pertaining to this project, including without limitation any contract or agreement for the provision of security services for the project, and in the event of such assignment, the association shall accept such assignment and fully assume the obligations thereunder. B, in the city response says, not providing proper security for cannabis businesses in a current cannabis business park is in violation of DHSMC Chapter 5.5. Although the 2022 specific plan proposes to eliminate the quote cannabis business park designation, elimination of the business park security would be detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare. There are current cannabis operators within the specific plan, and such operators would not have the required business park security. Common area security is needed both to protect public safety as well to comply with DHSMC Chapter 5.5. First, the POA has put forth a proposal for general park ingress and egress security called the Butterfly MX system. This system is used across the country to secure over 10,000 buildings and over 1 million apartments. This, without question, is satisfactory for basic security service for the perimeter of the park. As each building within the park is always locked and under an entirely different access system to prevent any unimproved access, details and demos have been given to Doria and staff directly from Butterfly MX team, and their only comment is this is not sufficient for cannabis operators' security. While we recommend that the PC motions to take city count, to City Council the ability of cannabis operators to use an automated access system such as Butterfly MX to reduce the onerous perimeter security requirements. That is not the goal of this update. The bottom line, perimeter access control for the whole park is being installed as we speak, and this system meets access control the city attorney alleges would be detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare of the city. It's used in homeowners associations all over the country. Second, SMC Chapter 5.5 for, quote, cannabis business parks was enacted after the Coachillin specific plan received approvals in 2017, nearly 4 years later in 2021. This is a relatively new requirement imposed by the City of Desert Hot Springs, which is not derived from any state regulatory requirements and forced on the developer of the Coachillin Business Park unnecessarily. Current cannabis operators within the park have the ability to hire to guard the compound perimeter of the project. Coachillin and the POA have encouraged this. They can do all their own security, just like security was before. They can put them in the guard shacks as soon as our guard shacks are finished. In the interim, they can put a temporary out front like they had out before, and they can guard the entire project safely and securely, exactly as it was before. The only difference being they need to write the checks directly to the security company. The property owners association no longer will be involved. They can do so at any time and have been encouraged by Coachillin Holdings to do so. Coachillin Holdings is not a cannabis company and in no way participates in the propagation, distribution, or sale of any controlled substance. Therefore, Coachillin Holdings cannot be forced by the city to pay for the security of individual cannabis operators in the park who did not pay their proportionate shares of those regulatory/compliance-derived costs. Operators failed to pay their security bill. Interestingly enough, among the group who just stood up here, they owe the Properties Owners Association in excess of $1.4 million. That is why the Property Owners Association is in bankruptcy, because these cannabis operators don't pay their bills. That's also why the POA doesn't want to be in between any longer, nor should we be forced to do so. Operators failed to pay their security bill, so security services ceased to be provided. And understandably so. I don't think anybody in this room would like if they go home tomorrow and your homeowners association says, "Oh, King's X timeout. We want you to pay all the bills, and we're not going to pay you. You don't have to pay in. Half the park is not going to pay in. The other half needs to support those who don't pay." That's just not right on any level. At any point, the existing cannabis operators in the park can utilize the guard posts and other security-related infrastructure in the park to secure perimeter according to requirements of the city. They do not need the Property Owners Association to get involved to do that. What they want is the Property Owners Association, owned 70% by Coachillin Holdings, to pay all those bills, and then they don't pay the Property Owners Association so they can get a free ride and be freeloaders. That's what we have, a group of freeloaders. That cost is 100% in the regulatory permit holder's responsibility. Finally, Coachillin did pay the business park fee of $9,250 on 12/13/22. It was interesting that Patricia's statement here was on up to 12/12/2022. I hope it wasn't staff's intention to make Coachillin look bad, knowing that as we stand here today, that has been paid in protest, nonetheless, because Coachillin Holdings and the POA are not cannabis operators. And by paying a cannabis business park fee, puts us in the line of being a cannabis company and at risk of federal retaliation. The final day of permit extension, and have been in communication with staff and cannabis compliance throughout the whole year, discussing the implications of that new ordinance. Under C, the city attorney writes, "It is detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare to shift the responsibility for security implementation from the POA to the individual parcel owner. See section 10.2.1 generally of the 2022 specific plan, page 143 of 55. This is detrimental because there is no means to fund security of an already existing cannabis business park. DHSMC Chapter 5.5 generally provides that a cannabis business park operating a cannabis business needs to provide common security. DHSMC Chapter 5.5.150, that's 5.50.150. The 22 specific ends states, and I quote, "Individual parcel owners are responsible for security of their individual operations and must remain in compliance with the city and state regulations at all time. Page 143 of 155. The only security measures contemplated in the 2022 plan is outlined in section 10.2.1, which places the onus on the property owners to maintain a security gate, which gates are common areas of the general ingress/egress to the specific plan area and should be the responsibility of the POA. Our response: the highlighted statements above demonstrate a fundamental lack of understanding of what a property owners association is. The responsibility, security implementation, has not shifted. The POA was never responsible for park security. Quoting the 2017 original approved SP, the Coachillin development will provide internal private security on a contract basis administered and/or approved by the POA. The responsibility for security always remains with the owners or operators in the park who are subject to a regulatory mandate for security. It has been their responsibility since 2017 to implement the required security for their operations and satisfy necessary regulatory requirements. Whether that is accomplished under the umbrella of the POA or directly contracting security themselves, the situation remains unchanged. It's still the operators who are responsible for the business security. It is not the Property Owners Association, nor is it Coachillin Holdings or any related entities thereby. Why the city would be interfering in cannabis businesses and how they would contract security is nothing less than befuddling. The comment, quote, "There is no means to fund security of an already existing cannabis business park," is quite frankly ludicrous. Individual operators know this is a cost of business and need to plan accordingly. Lack of preparation on their part does not mandate any action on behalf of the POA or the developer. Number 2, POA issues. A, under the 2017 specific plan, the city attorney writes, all parcels were required by covenants to belong to and be governed by the Indian Canyon and 18th Property Owners Association, aka the POA. Page 132 of 184, red line version, this is no longer required in the 22 specific plan. This omission is detrimental because it provides uncertainty as how the POA will be funded. It is detrimental to omit from the 2022 specific plan how the POA will be funded because the POA is needed to fund common areas, infrastructure, landscaping, and security. Further, the current POA is in bankruptcy and there is significant uncertainty as to the funding of the common areas, infrastructure, landscaping, and security. Our response: the POA is in a Chapter 5, Subchapter 11 reorganization of bankruptcy proceedings. There will be an entity, whether it's the same Indian Canyon and 18th Owners Association or a derivative entity, that will be responsible for maintenance of the private streets, common areas, landscaping, infrastructure, etc. This is discussed in multiple areas of our SP at the direction from city staff. It appears as though the city attorney is working against staff on this very effort as well as the developer. Note, if there is no POA in the future, then the owner of the common areas, who right now, Coachillin Holdings, because 60% of the parcels have not been sold in the project, we own all the common areas, we would maintain those. And that would be our responsibility because we're the owner of those. Once 60% of the project is sold out, the declarant, Coachillin Holdings, would turn that over to the POA and they would maintain those. And as soon as we get time to get through these lawsuits from our wonderful parcel owners who don't pay their bills, then we can get to doing turnovers to the POA or whatever successor entity ends up coming out of bankruptcy court. Currently, ownership of all common areas in the project is still the developer Coachillin Holdings. According to the CC&Rs and bylaws from 2017, those common areas are only conveyed to the POA from the declarant developer when the declarant no longer owns more than 60% of the parcels. So as you heard testimony from a couple of attorneys, it's very disingenuous for them to paint the picture that we're holding on somehow to these at the benefit of ourselves and at the detriment of their clients when we just haven't met the time frame or the sales to get there. B, under 2017 specific plan, all parcels within the specific plan were required by covenants to belong to and be governed by the Indian Canyon and 18th Property Owners Association, aka the POA. Under the 2017 specific plan, the POA was responsible for all the, quote, security, maintenance, financing, and infrastructure maintenance and improvements. Veterans High Risk Security Solutions, Inc., VHRSS, was contracted by Coachillin for security services from 2017 to 2022. The 2022 specific plan shifts the responsibility for security implementation from the POA to the individual parcel owner and provides that individual parcel owners are responsible for security of their individual operations and must maintain in compliance with city and state regulations at all times. This shifting is detrimental to public health and safety because there is significant uncertainty as to the funding of the common areas, infrastructure, landscaping, and security. Currently, there is no security for the specific plan area. See code compliance findings below. Our response, and my apologies, but this is what happens when legal does it. This is what happens when you get sued by people who don't pay their bills. Response, again, this is factually inaccurate. There has been no shift in responsibility, as already addressed from the inception of this project. Property owners themselves have always been responsible for funding all the things listed and still are, as they are the only members of the association. There are no third-party members that are not parcel owners in the park. The POA is merely a vehicle by which property owners had the opportunity but not the obligation to share security costs through. The delinquent non-paying POA members have relied on Coachillin Holdings and other upstanding POA members to continue subsidizing their operational expenses by not paying the assessments provided by the POA for their security. Fact. Maintenance of common areas, private roads, and landscaping will still be handled by the owner of those common areas, whether that remains as the developer or a simplified version of a POA after assignment. Fact, these operators who've not paid their POA assessments are in violation of their purchase and sale agreements and the CCRs, and this is not the fault of Coachillin Holdings or the POA as implied in this finding for denial. C, under the 2017 specific plan, all future parcels would be subject to the POA. Page 37 of 184 of the red line version. This is no longer required in the 2022 specific plan. This omission is detrimental because it provides uncertainty as to how the POA will be funded. It is detrimental to omit how the POA will be funded because the POA is needed to fund common areas, infrastructure, landscaping, and security. Our response, this is again simply false. The changes do not remove the requirements for parcel owners to be part of an association to pay for common areas, infrastructure, and landscaping. The city attorney is misrepresenting future purchase and sale agreements, and of which the city is not privy to, creating misrepresentation and grossly overstepping her purview. This modification only reiterates how that 2017 SP was approved, and all parcel owners, current and future, are subject to the CC&Rs, bylaws, and guidelines of the POA, regardless of the current Chapter 5 reorganization bankruptcy proceedings. Considering there are only a handful of POA members who are current with their assessments/bills, the paying POA member parcel owners cannot reasonably be coerced by the city to continue to pay for security that benefits only the non-paying cannabis parcel operators. D, under the 2017 plan, Section 10.5 set forth the actual POAs, CCNRs, page 175 of 184 red line version. CCNRs are omitted and not set forth in the 22 specific plan. Therefore, the 2022 specific plan is incomplete. This omission or incompleteness is detrimental because it provides uncertainty as how the POA will be funded and uncertainty as to the responsibility and liabilities of the POA. It is detrimental to omit from the specific plan how the POA will be funded because the POA is needed to fund common areas, infrastructure, landscaping, and security. Section 10.5 of the specific plan still references, this is our response, still references the Property Owners Association, CCNRs, and bylaws in the exact same appendix as approved in the 2017 specific plan. The city has always had the CCNRs and bylaws of the Property Owners Association in hand since 2017. City staff did not request that we resubmit those documents since those documents have not changed and, more importantly, are not relevant to this specific plan amendment. The restructuring of the current POA has nothing to do with specific plan amendment apart from two key areas. One, the POA no longer contracts and pays for regulatory mandated security of individual operations. The individual property operators bear the responsibility for contracting and paying for that service directly. Recall, this is not a change from what is allowed by the 2017 approved specific plan, CCNRs, or bylaws. And number two, this specific plan amendment removes the POA as a design review intermediary between city's community development director and associated staff, placing the design review approval power 100% in the hands of city staff. To ensure compliance with the design guidelines, note, this was a request made by city staff in 2020. Neither of these are materially significant changes impacting anything related to the community safety. It only gives the city complete power to enforce design guidelines and security requirements from individual operators, owners in the park. The POA is not needed to fund security, nor does the association need to be an intermediary of funding cannabis compliance required security services. Owners and operators within the park can and must fund their security. It is merely an encouragement by the developer to share costs with other operators to reduce that financial burden on individual operators. The cost-sharing idea was never intended to serve as a replacement for funding of security, and it would not be logical to assert such. I'm sorry. E, under the 2017 specific plan, implementation of private enforcement measures was done via the POA. All parcels were required by covenants recorded on the properties to belong to the POA. The POA was also responsible for implementing and administering the CCNRs. See page 161 of 184 of the red line version, according to the city attorney. This omission is detrimental because it provides uncertainty as to how the POA will be administered and how the POA will ensure private enforcement. It is detrimental to omit from the specific plan how the POA will handle and enforce private matters, such as lack of certainty will cause disputes among property owners, exactly like we have. When you have property owners who don't want to pay their bills and refuse to pay their bills, that's exactly where you land. Response. This is inaccurate. There is and still will be a property owners association post-BK proceedings. The POA is going through a restructuring bankruptcy proceeding. All owners are still required to participate in common area maintenance, landscape maintenance, etc., including future property owners. Nothing's changed there. The city attorney is demonstrating, again, a lack of understanding of the bankruptcy proceedings. All parcel owners, current and future, are subject to CC&Rs and bylaws of the POA, regardless of Chapter 5 reorganization proceedings. Note, if the city is going to get involved in POA efforts, the city must also get involved with each parcel owner's purchase and sale agreement and the responsibilities outlined there. This is obviously not reasonable. 3, code compliance issues. Coachillin is currently operating a cannabis business park as defined in Chapter 5.5.150 of the Desert Hot Springs Muni Code, DHSMC. On July 8th of 2021, Cannabis Compliance Division requested a letter that Coachillin apply for and obtain a cannabis business park permit pursuant to DHSMC. After Coachillin failed to obtain the permit or failed to apply for the permit, a code case was formally opened and subsequent inspection conducted. Coachillin was found to be in violation of the DHSMC. The Code Compliance Division has an active case, Code 22-1119. Against Coachillin for failing to obtain a cannabis business park permit and failing to provide security to the park in compliance with the 2017 specific plan, Section 9A, Section 5.6. On August 18th, over more than a year after having received notice, Coachillin filed an application for the Cannabis Business Park regulatory permit. This is in total protest. The city, by doing this and putting Coachillin in this, is putting us in the cannabis business, directly putting us in lines of federal regulators. We never intended to be there. Everybody knew. Our CC&Rs and all documents all always showed that we never wanted to be in the direct lines, and city attorney managed to pull that off. Such violation of the DHSMC is detrimental to the public health interests of the city. Our answer, false. Perhaps cannabis compliance should have been consulted prior to publishing this report. Payment was submitted on 12/13/22, the final date of the permit extension. Coachillin has been in communication with staff and cannabis compliance regularly throughout the non-payment period, as this was a relatively new permit and there was massive confusion and concern about this, as operators in the park complained and rejected the need for it. All of the POAs, all of Coachillin's are pass-through costs. So these guys all objected because they all had their regulatory permits. It's a problem. And they rejected the need for it as they already had active regulatory permits. Important to note, Coachillin Holdings and the POA do not engage in propagation, distribution, or transport of any controlled substance. Coachillin and the POA are more akin to landlords, and it makes no sense to require a landlord to obtain a cannabis business park permit. This is critical to note. Doing so may cause the POA/CHL to be deemed to derive its income from cannabis operations, when by law they clearly cannot. All parcel owners have testified in BK court to the fact that they are not cannabis companies, because they are not. All parcel owners in the park are landlords, and all have testified as real estate companies. Since October 5th, 2022, this is B, all security for facilities in Coachillin ceased. Since then, the main gates to Coachillin Cannabis Business Park have been open and unsecured. The entry gate to Coachillin remains unsecured without the presence of security. Such lack of security is detrimental to the public interest and health and safety or welfare of the city. At any time, any one of these cannabis regulated companies could be providing security at the perimeter of the park and paying for it directly. They're not restricted from doing such. We've encouraged them to do such. All actions taken by the POA have received judicial approval in accordance with BK rulings. Let me repeat. All actions taken by the POA have received judicial approval in accordance with BK court rulings. C, On November 8, 2022, Veterans High Risk Security, private security company, ceased monitoring the cameras due to non-payment. The Code Compliance Division issued a citation to Coachillin on September 13th and on November 19th for the following violations of DSMC 50.15A cannabis business parks. But I want to give our response. VHRSS never monitored cameras for Coachillin, ever. They monitor cameras for the cannabis operators, regulatory permit holders within the Coachillin Park. Coachillin Holdings and the POA are not cannabis operators, and neither entity themselves has any regulatory mandate for cannabis compliance monitoring of any kind. Fact, the City of Desert Hot Springs issued citations to the cannabis businesses in the park, including all parcels found to be out of compliance, i.e. parcels owned by others. Prior to commencing or continuing operations, the owner of cannabis business park shall obtain a cannabis facilities permit and provisions. I'm not going to reread that. Then we also have Section 9A of the Coachillin Cannabis Business Park Specific Plan, a City of Desert Hot Springs regulatory procedures. This specific plan will be enforced according to the adopted requirements of the City of Desert Hot Springs Muni Code, including Title 17 and processing procedures by use in the city. Additionally, Coachillin specific plan will be subject to non-statute processes and procedures in place within the City of Desert Hot Springs Department of Community Development and the City of Desert Hot Springs Planning Commission. The Community Development Director shall be responsible for interpreting and enforcing the regulations, standards, and design guidelines set forth therein. Section 5.6 of the Coachillin Cannabis Business Park Specific Plan. The Coachillin development will provide internal private security on a contract basis administered by the Property Owners Association. Security will be handled by 24/7, 365 by armed military veterans, highly ranked in their former military branch and recently retired from service, all with extensive experience securing U.S. Embassy worldwide. The Coachillin security team will work closely with local police, ultimately be deputized, and be ready to mobilize at a moment's notice to assist at DHS first responders in the event of an emergency. Methods promoted by Coachillin to prevent or reduce crime include adequate street security lighting, integration of defensible space design concepts. Defensible space design concepts allow passive observation and surveillance, deploying careful building, sighting, and visibility. Such lack of security violations of DHSMC are detrimental to public health. Whoever wrote this resolution for denial clearly copied from a non-active draft version of the 2017 approved plan. The police department made us remove anything related to deputization of the Coachillin security team, and in the approved Coachillin specific plan from 2017, Section 5.6 does not contain any of this verbiage copied above. It discusses schools and libraries. Good job, Jennifer. See verbiage copied here in the 2017 approved final clean Coachillin specific plan. Page 44 of 131, clean. The Coachillin development will provide internal security plan on a contract basis administered and or approved by the Indian County and 18th Property Owners Association. Security was never mandated to be the POA's sole responsibility. The POA has always been a potential vehicle to contract and bill property owners for services should they elect to share in the cost of the contract. Fact, security services contracted by the POA for VHRSS until recently, when certain parcel owners in the park decided they didn't want to pay their proportionate share of those services required by their PSAs, CCNRs. Rather, they continue to force the POA members who are current on their assessments and enable unnecessary subsidization of the non-paying, habitually delinquent property owners. The only logical step was to make those operators contract and pay for their regulatory mandated security services directly with the security provider. D, On October 14, 2021, a code violation. Code 21-1452 was initiated for the illicit discharge of wastewater. Upon inspection of the property, there was raw sewage backing up into the structure. This was parcel number 10. This is not a Coachillin-owned parcel. This is Maddie's parcel, as a matter of fact, who testified earlier. The construction manager had routed the runoff out of the facility over the right-of-way, and it was discharging into the storm drain. The manhole on the site had a piece of heavy machinery parked over it, operated and contracted by Coachillin, so the sewer system is not visible or accessible. An administrative citation was issued for illicit dumping of raw sewage and dumping into a storm drain to the property owner since the discharge was upon their property. Such violation is detrimental to the public interest, health, safety, and convenience and welfare of the city. This would have never happened if Maddie had decided to pay for the cost of her interim sewer system to be able to handle their interim sewer waste. It could have been going in, but she refused to sign contracts. She refused to pay for the cost of sewer service, and therefore she was never allowed access to the main lines. On November 22nd, 2022, a code violation was initiated for the illicit discharge of raw sewage. Upon inspection, it was determined that raw sewage was coming from the sewer cap in the street in front of 18194 Blue Dream Crossing within the Coachillin Cannabis Business Park. On November 23rd, 2022, an administrative citation number 28514D was issued to the property owner for the illicit discharge of raw sewage since the discharge was upon their property. Such violation is detrimental to the public interest and health and safety of the city. Our response, this was our wonderful parcel number 10, overflowing their own sewage holding tank. For these illegal discharge and sewer violations, not Coachillin Holdings. Furthermore, is an extraneous fact that has nothing to do with this specific plan amendment. It is irrelevant and should be removed from the findings. Why would this council, why would this group of commissioners punish Coachillin Holdings and or the POA for something a property owner did that was detrimental to the public health? How is that our responsibility? F, on April 27, 2022, a complaint was made to the Code Compliance Division, initiating an investigation. Code 22-489, Code 22-490, Code 22-491 for illicit discharge of wastewater at the property. During an inspection on May 24th of 2002, that's amazing. Jennifer went back in time 12 years. It was determined that a wastewater drain had been installed by Coachillin across 3 parcels and ending at a water tank in the south end of the Coachillin property. This new construction was conducted without building permits. Also, the water tank was not sufficiently storing the water accumulation, and there was water spillage onto the ground surrounding the water tank, draining it into the retention basin. Additionally, a water truck contracted by Coachillin was being filled with this tank for the purpose of dust mitigation. The illicit discharge of water constitutes a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System violation, and the illegal construction constitutes a public nuisance violation. A citation was issued on June 2nd, 2022 for the illicit discharge of wastewater, constructing of a plumbing and water tank on the site. Such violation is detrimental to the public interest. This is a parcel owned by Coachillin Holdings, and this was a cannabis wastewater tank. And we were using the cannabis wastewater, mixing it with fresh ag water, and we were using it as PM10 mitigation in a program that was submitted to the Water Board. They since have had no way that they can permit such use, so now we just evaporate it in our RO plant and evaporate the water. Response, again, it appears to be an intentionally incomplete summary of the particular situation with the goal of demonizing Coachillin. Several choice words were used in this paragraph that are actually false. This has all been resolved with the Water Resources Control Board. You heard testimony from NV5 today that we are absolutely in current compliance with the Water Board, with our septic facility that handles all of the waste out of Coachillin, and it is running well. Knock on something. The city is fully aware of the mitigation measures and processes that are in place following Coachillin's complete, transparent interactions with the RWQCB in this matter. Fact, it was not determined by the Water Board to be illicit. There were no fines. There was no harm. Only instruction from the Water Board was to seek a permit to do so. And we're actively working with the Water Board to find a solution for cannabis wastewater. In the meantime, we're simply evaporating it. The Water Board has a dilemma. They don't have cannabis permits in process to know how to deal with cannabis waste. So it's a difficult issue, and it's waters that these guys should not have to act as though they are a public health nuisance. Number 4, other findings. We're almost there. Hey, bear with me. This 2022 specific plan is quote-unquote inaccurate, according to the city attorney. 2022 specific plan is inaccurate specifically as to the mention and reiteration of inaccurate environmental documents. The 2022 specific plan references on several pages, see specifically section 10.6, that an addendum and mitigated declaration was prepared for the project. The 2022 specific plan interlaces these references throughout this document. This is incorrect and inaccurate. No addendum or mitigation negative declaration was prepared for this project. Therefore, the specific plan is, quote, inaccurate and very confusing, according to the city attorney. As any member of the public and as well as future city councils and staff would be misinformed, this confusion is detrimental to public health, safety, welfare, considering that the public could be confused reading and implementing the 2022 specific plan. False. In 2017, the original specific plan was obtained through an initial study and mitigated negative declaration addendum, MNDA, from the previously approved Palm Springs Industrial Park entitlements. The project was approved with an MND, approved through the Riverside County, which came with the property when the city annexed the property in 2008, 2010. City staff and the city attorney are fully aware of this fact. Mitigated negative declaration addendums are discussed in the project history context throughout the SP amendment, and per staff direction were included. There is nothing confusing about this, and I'm quite frankly shocked. In drafting this resolution for denial, City Attorney Jennifer Mizrahi was fully aware of the role of the MNDAs have had in this project's CEQA history. Given that Mizrahi drafted the resolution for approval of the original 2017 specific plan, including associated CEQA documentation, including an MNDA. Our CEQA attorney, Jason Ackerman, is here and available to answer more questions related to that if you need to hear from the CEQA attorney side again. Section 5. Do I need to read what Section 5 says? Can I speed up and just get to my answers? Would that be okay? Help everybody since you have copies?
Whatever you choose, sir. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll edit and shorten them then. The Planning Commission finds and recommends that the City Council find that it has considered all the evidence submitted into administrative record for the project and in accordance with Government Code Section 65-451. Planning Commission recommends that City Council make the following findings for denial of the specific plan. Now, we know that you haven't made this denial yet, so I don't want to get into it anything further than to address the finding. The finding below says City Council finds the following. A, 2022 specific plan does not meet subsection 2 of 65-451 because the 22 specific plan does not include text or diagram in detail regarding the proposed distribution, location, extent, intensity of major components of the public and private transportation, sewage, water, drainage, solid waste disposal, energy, and other essential facilities proposed to the location within the area covered by the plan and needed to support the land uses described in the plan. Again, false. The specific plan describes all of these things exactly in as much detail as the approved 2017 plan did. The only difference between 2017 plan and the 22 plan is that nearly all of the infrastructure components contemplated in 2017 have been installed and completed by 2022. Master utility plan is still included, as well as thorough description of infrastructure components of the project. I have no idea where the city attorney is coming from on this to ask for more than was already approved by herself in 2017, and citing that as a reason the 2022 amendment is quote unquote incomplete makes zero sense. Regarding the interim wastewater treatment plant issues below, the city has in their possession the information from the RWQCB, permits, etc. You have it all. And the WSA-WSV for the project prepared by MSWD in 2017 goes into further detail on this. You have all of those documents. If it was sufficient to discuss in this specific plan as written in 2017, why would it not be sufficient to leave as is? The 2022 amendment of the specific plan even provides more details than the 2017 specific plan did on interim wastewater treatment. Number one, the 2022 specific plan reflects temporary on-site treatment of the system. You heard NV5's testimony that the word on-site, contrary to what attorneys are trying to push in the Regional Water Quality Control Board world, isn't even talking about geography. But if we do want to get technical, the 18 acres where the current engineered water septic system currently relies were formed by a lot line adjustment from a lot inside the park walls. So it is technically on site if we want to get in the technical terms. Note, the interim water treatment system may never be removed. It may become a commercial cannabis wastewater treatment site, depending on city, water board, and MSWD pre-treatment requirements going forward. All three promised to get together. All three promised us in January of this year to come up with a plan as to what the pre-treatment requirements would be for cannabis producers. They still have not come up with a pre-treatment plan. We don't know what it is. So this facility, even though the regional plant is supposed to be built by MSWD and due in November of 2023. Eric, are we still online for November of 2023 with the regional plant?
Mr. Dickerson, I'd ask you to please keep your comments to the Planning Commission.
Okay,
Thank
sounds
you.
good. I apologize. So, according to the website at MSWD, their regional plant, which will service Coachillin and others, will be done in November of this coming year. So all of this talk about, oh my God, we're going to put these guys out of business, we're going out of business, we're all dying and it's all not happening, it's just ridiculous. Comment, the specific plan does not need to outline how it will be transitioned to a permanent sewer hookup because MSWD does not have a permanent plant to transition to at this time. Earliest estimate of the completion of the regional treatment plant is November of 2023. And if/when MSD finishes construction, we will hook up. Coachillin Holdings was conditioned by MSWD to install sewer mains extending all the way to the location of the future regional plant on the east end of 19th Avenue. Those mains were installed years ago. The 2022 specific plan reflects a temporary, private, off-site water treatment system storage facility as its major component for sewage solid waste disposal. However, the 2022 plan does not provide sufficient text or diagrams as to how the temporary private off-site sewer treatment storm system facility will operate and function, how it will be removed and properly abated or transitioned to a permanent sewer hookup. There is no program of implementation measures for these infrastructure comments. The septic system is only permittable through the Regional Water Quality Control Board. That is not a permit that occurs at the city. So it doesn't need to be in this specific plan. But details, 100% of this information is already in the city's hands. And all relevant agencies were party to planning, design, construction, inspection, and commissioning of the system. It's operational, and it has been for almost 3 years now. City staff was adamant during red line processes of this SP amendment that the SP is not a construction update document. That is directly from Patricia and her team. Mention the facilities planned in the place is sufficient. So that is what we did, exactly what staff recommended us do. Staff should have informed the city attorney, and the city attorney should have listened. It's clear again, the city attorney needs to get on the same page as her client because the city attorney directly contradicts the direction of staff. B, 2022 plan does not meet subsection 3 of 65-451 as the 2022 specific plan does not include text, diagram, specific details. 1. The specific plan is incomplete. The 2022 specific plan does not include CC&Rs of the POA. It is blank and was never provided to the city. Page 146 of 155 of the specific plan provides maintenance will be handled by a POA or other entity designated to handle common area maintenance, streets, perimeter fence maintenance, and other common benefits to all parcels. Currently, the POA holds a responsibility to maintain and provide for sewer solid waste disposal. However, 2022 specific plan does not contain the terms and conditions of the CC&Rs of the POA, so there's no way to know how the development will proceed, as the terms and conditions of the CC&Rs were not provided. This omission does not provide in detail the standards by which the development will proceed. This is factually false. The CC&Rs have not changed since early 2019 when they were amended. With this specific plan amendment, the CC&Rs will only be amended again following completion of the Chapter 5 reorganization of the bankruptcy proceedings. The active CC&Rs have been in the city's hands since the formation in 2017 and after amending in 2019. Both have been subsequently recorded by the county. How then can the city attorney claim they were never provided to the city? I quote, if CC&Rs and bylaws of the POA have literally been in their hands for over 5 years. Second, highlighted sentence above where it says, currently the POA holds a responsibility to maintain and provide sewer and solid waste, is also factually false. The POA has no responsibility to maintain or provide for sewer solid waste disposal. See the WSA, WSV, and conditions of approval from MSWD dating back to 2017. The developer was conditioned to install interim waste systems, not the POA. The city attorney again demonstrates a fundamental lack of understanding of this project from 2017 to now. Number 2, under the 2017 specific plan, all parcels were required by covenants to be governed by the Indian Canyon 18th Property Owners Association, aka the POA. Page 132 of the 184 red line. This is no longer required in the 2022 specific plan. This omission is detrimental because it provides uncertainty as to how the POA will be funded. It is detrimental to omit from the 2022 specific plan how the POA will be funded because the POA is needed to fund common areas, infrastructure, and security. The POA is still operating. It's just in bankruptcy. Its funding is being reported in the bankruptcy reports every month, every week actually we're doing one report of or another. Further, the POA currently is in bankruptcy and there is significant uncertainty as to the funding. Again, we need to revisit the entities actually responsible for these items. Infrastructure is the developer's responsibility and has been 99% completed. Common areas are still owned by the declarant of the POA and only get turned over to the POA when the declarant no longer owns 60% of the parcels of the park. So the POA technically doesn't even own the common areas today. Security has always been the responsibility of individual parcel owners. See excerpts from 2017 specific plan approval, the approved Coachillin Security Plan, Appendix 10.2, and see the CC&Rs from the POA. Number 3, under the 2017 specific plan, all parcels within the specific plan were required by covenants to belong to and be governed by the Indian Canyon 18th Property Owners Association, aka the POA. Under the 2017 plan, the POA was responsible for all the security, maintenance, financing, and infrastructure maintenance and improvements. Veterans High Risk Security Solutions, Inc. was contracted by Coachillin for security services from 2017 to 2022. The 2022, and this is highlighted, specific plan shifts the responsibility for security implementation from the POA to the individual parcel owners and provides that, quote, individual parcel owners are responsible for security of their individual operations and must remain in compliance with city and state regulations at all times, unquote. This shifting is detrimental to public health and safety because there is significant uncertainty as to the funding of the common areas, infrastructure, landscape, and the security. Currently, there is no security for the specific plan area. This omission does not provide in detail the standards by which the development will proceed. False and gross misstatement. See above for all mentions of the security in 2017 approved specific plan and 2017 security plan appendix plus the CC&Rs. Comment. Stating that individual parcel owners are responsible for the security of their individual operations does not change anything, other than it removes the POA from being in the middle. The owners, i.e. members of the POA, have always been responsible for their security. They didn't pay the POA for those contracted services, so the POA is forcing them to contract for security directly on their own. Simple. None of the changing security contracts implies funding uncertainty for common area maintenance and landscaping maintenance, as stated here. And it is illogical to insert stuff. It's illogical to assert that the declarant, who owns over 70% of the lots right now, who has over $60 million in the project, is going to walk from $60 million. That doesn't even stand the test of reason. Number 4. Under the 2017 specific plan, all future parcels would be subject to the POA. Page 37 of 184 redline version. There is no longer required in the 2022 specific plan. That was the highlighted parts. Again, false. The association CC&Rs and bylaws are still recorded within the county and city. That is something that would go on and purchase and sale agreement to every future parcel owner. That doesn't change, and city staff knows this. Fact, all parcel owners, current and future, are subject to the CC&Rs and bylaws of the POA, regardless of the current Chapter 5 reorganization bankruptcy proceedings. Note, if the city is going to get involved in the POA efforts, the city, again, must also get involved with the parcel owners' purchase and sale agreements and the responsibilities outlined therein. This is obviously not even reasonable. It's surprising the city attorney went to such lengths of convoluting something as simple as CC&Rs and bylaws recorded with the parcels at the county level. Number 5, Section 10.5, under the specific plan, Section 10.5 set forth the actual POA CC&Rs. Page 175 of 184. The CC&Rs are omitted and not set forth in the 22 specific plan. Again, false. In the 2017 specific plan, the Appendix 10.5 was exactly the same as it appears herein. Nothing related to the CC&Rs has been removed from the specific plan or omitted. Section 10.5 is still Appendix 10.5, a reference to a much larger pair of separate documents, the CC&Rs and bylaws, that still exist and have been in the city's possession since 2017, amended by the POA in 2018 and recorded and in the county in 2019. Number 6. Under the specific plan implementation of private enforcement measures. The highlighted portion, the POA was also responsible for implementing and administering the CC&Rs. See page 161 of 184. This omission is detrimental because it provides uncertainty as to how the POA will be administered and how the POA will ensure private enforcement. Again, the POA is only changing in 2 key areas. The POA is no longer required for design review approvals to review by the city. Future development goes straight to the development permit process submitted by the city. The POA is now out of that process. Summary, the city now has all the power to enforce design guidelines, and there's no required POA approval step in the middle. This was requested again by staff in 2020. 2, the security required for regulatory permit holders is not contracted by the POA and then subsequently billed to parcel owners. The parcel owners requiring security services by regulatory mandate are to contract directly for those security services for their operation. There's still a perimeter wall. There are guard posts and parcel owners that are directly contracted with security providers can utilize to meet their city requirements. Cakewalk. Nothing has to change. And it will still be secured as good as it was before. Only difference is who pays the bills. Parcel owners were not paying their bills, and the POA was stuck with millions in receivables after paying for those security services up front on behalf of those parcel owners. Does it not make the most sense to have operators contract directly with their service provider? Since those operators are the ones with a regulatory mandate to have a certain security services by the city or the state, is it not unreasonable and unfair to burden the other parcel owners with vacant parcels or parcels with operations not subject to cannabis compliance related mandates to pay for those services? The answer is no. It's not reasonable. 7. Further, this subsection is not met because the 22 specific plan is inaccurate. And in highlight, this 2022 specific plan is inaccurate specifically as to the mention and reiteration of inaccurate environmental documents. You've heard testimony here tonight. There are no inaccurate environmental documents of any kind. And this is a defensible CEQA document you're voting on. Again, everyone in city staff level is fully aware that the Coachillin specific plan project in 2017 was approved with an initial study and mitigated negative declaration addendum. City attorney was also present at that approval and therefore without excuse for not knowing that. Then the specific plan amendment in 2020 was vacated by council on the basis of a letter from SAFER, who has a representative attorney here. The applicant was instructed by the city to do a project EIR to address those environmental concerns. We did that. The concerns were addressed and done 100% in compliance in accordance with city staff's requests, requirements, and directions. All comments received by the various agencies have been addressed by ECOR, NV5, and Jason, our attorney, in the project EIR. Everything has been done by the book with complete input and direction of city staff. Everything. The 2022 specific plan does not meet subsection 4 of 65-451, and the highlighted portion under number 1 says, however, the 2022 specific plan does not provide sufficient text or diagrams as to how the temporary on-site water treatment system will be removed and transitioned. There's no program of implementation measures for these structures. The city, again, isn't the reviewing governmental body for that. That's the Regional Water Quality Control Board. The program of implementation measures have not changed from 2017 approval. If the infrastructure plans haven't changed since the 2017 approvals, and all infrastructure has been installed according to the plans provided by the relevant agencies, Southern Cal Edison, SoCal Gas, MSWD, etc., what's the problem here? And the interim wastewater treatment facility, as installed, is fully permitted by the Water Board. The city has been in possession of those documents for years now, and has been in the loop on all necessary conversions with relevant agencies. So then, what else is necessary to include the specific plan amendment for this wastewater treatment interim plant if what exists already is exactly what was improved in 2017? What new needs to be added? The city attorney prepared a resolution for approval of this exact information in 2017. And now the city attorney cites the same information as a finding for denial in 2022. Stranger still, finding this as a reason for denial after the plant had been installed and permitted and commissioned. See the Water Board permit. This is not a city compliance issue and has no relevance to the specific plan amendment before this PC. Number 2, the 2022 specific plan reflects a temporary private off-site sewer treatment storage facility. However, the highlighted position says the 2022 plan does not provide for sufficient tests or diagrams. However, the temporary private off-site sewer treatment facility will operate and function how it will be removed and properly abated. Here we go again, as if the city is not in possession of all related permitting documentation, plans, inspection reports from the interim wastewater treatment plant that has been installed in operation for a couple of years now, 4 years now. The requirements of the 2017 approval have not changed, and this SP went through council approval just fine in 2017 with no problems. Note, the interim wastewater treatment plant may never be removed. It may be turned into a commercial use with new Water Board permits. And maybe one of that commercial uses, if MSWD and the Water Board and the city can't come to resolution on pre-treatment requirements, that little package plant may be the solution for handling for cannabis wastewater for all of the cannabis facilities in the city, not just Coachillin. That would undergo a complete separate group of permits and be a long process, but it's possible. So it may never be removed. So we aren't at this time. It'd be wrong or short-sighted to come up with a removal plan and be locked into that when it may never be removed. Appendix 10.5 of the SP was also left blank in 2017 and obviously references a separate collection of 2 PDFs, the recorded CC&Rs and bylaws of the POA. The city had both documents in their possession since 2017, including the minor amended CC&Rs recorded by the county in 2019. If the city attorney or city staff are having trouble locating these POA governance documents, please speak up. They've never been requested before we just saw this in writing here. We've had 9 months to work on this specific plan amendment. I would think if those were important, those would have been a request that came to us long ago. No reason to use this as a finding for denial, and when we can easily resend the recorded copies from a half-decade ago, again, at no time has any staff department requested the CC&Rs or bylaws to be resent in any communications over the last 2 years. The findings 4 through 8 below have all been covered ad nauseum in the above commentary already. However, the same answers will apply. That's 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Finally, on Section 6A, the proposed 2022 specific plan includes changes that would be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the city of Desert Hot Springs. This is categorically false, and that's exactly what this commission must find. There is no detriment to public health and safety if the city simply requires cannabis operators to be responsible for cannabis operating licensure. Property owners are responsible for their required security in the park. They've always been responsible, dating back to the 2017 approvals. The association is a collective group of parcel owners. So effectively, nothing has changed except the entity contracting for security. B. The highlighted section says there are current cannabis operators within the specific plan, and such operators would not have the required business park security. Again, since 2017, all documentation in the SP security plan, CC&Rs for the Coachillin part have been very clear that the parties responsible for security are the parcel owners, those needing the security compliance. And the POA can either contract security on owner's behalf or simply approve of security services the owners contract directly. The fact that the city, 4 years after adoption of the Coachillin specific plan in 2017, created a new regulation designating the cannabis business park fee permit requirement does not somehow make POA responsible for providing security. The owners themselves have always been responsible in the Coachillin Park. The POA was merely a vehicle which the owners could use to collectively share those costs and pass them through. C, it is detrimental to the public health and safety and welfare to shift responsibility. Again, the answer is the responsibility of the members of the POA, aka the parcel owners, is to pay their regulatory mandated security. Until recently, the POA contracted security and billed members via POA assessments. The parties responsible for paying those securities have not changed. Parcel owners are still responsible for their security as they always have been. The situation is this. Many deadbeat parcel owners have refused or failed to pay most or any of their POA assessments, leaving the handful of upstanding POA members who are current with their assessments to effectively subsidize the security costs and other costs for delinquent non-paying members. So the only difference here is who contracts for the security services. It's the same people. Same parcel owners who are responsible to pay. 2 POA issues, we get into the same thing, and our comment is above breakdown of all security-related language from 2017 and the 2017 approved security plan and CC&Rs of the POA, top of this document in red. The answer is false. The POA has never had the responsibility of security, ever. Not in Coachillin. Security has always been in the responsibility of property owners. The POA was merely a mechanism by which the individual owners and operators had the opportunity to jointly share costs of the security services. And I would add that if they just paid their bills, we wouldn't even be having this conversation and this sea of non-payers trying to blame Coachillin for their failed efforts. Everything else has been addressed above, I believe, until we get down to section 9, severability. If any, and our comment is as follows: if any section of this resolution for denial is found to be valid, the city is going to be in a position again with uninformed advice from its third-party contracted counsel. The city attorney in drafting of this document recommending denial demonstrate a lack of pro-development work product, absent of understanding the project in front of her. The city attorney has thrown her client's staff under the bus on numerous occasions in this SP amendment process, and now made a poor recommendation to her client, which completely contradicts city attorney's previous work, including red lines, previous track changes, docs, as well as drafting of resolution to approve adopted by city council more than a half decade ago. Finally, section 10, I don't even need to tell you. If you even look at that and read that, be careful to do that. I'm done. Sorry, again, I apologize for the long-witted. That's what happens when you have so much legal involved. And I would just plead to commissioners for you to do the following. We received SAFER's documents like SAFER always does, a couple days before the Planning Commission meeting. we were able to respond to all of it. We were able to get every single CEQA-related issue responded to and addressed, and enough to have a very well-qualified, amazing attorney, CEQA attorney, stand up here and tell you this is a defensible, winnable document. Coachillin has to protect this, pay the city's attorney's fees if Safer goes on and sues us again, which they shouldn't, since we paid them $95,000 the first time. I would say it's time that we actually get on with a vote and vote in the affirmative and push this up to City Council. Let's let City Council work out the details of these Property Owners Association quabbles, because really, Planning Commission, do you want a hotel and amphitheater there at the site or not? That's what you're voting on tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dickerson. Are there any questions of the applicant from the commission at this time? Commissioner Cook?
None.
Thank you, Commissioner Cook. Commissioner Grant?
None.
Vice Chair Nindell?
Just one.
Okay.
Are you going to talk about the hotel and the outdoor stadium? I mean, that's what you're selling here, right? But we haven't heard anything about it. I'd be curious. What have you found a hotel chain that's expressed an interest, or?
Yes, and yes. I can't share a lot, other than to tell you we have 4 operators competing for the operation of the amphitheater and hotel. We love all 4 of them. One of them is kind of standing out a little bit above the others. We expect to enter into a letter of intent, I'd say, in the next week. Our lender on the project is already through lending review, and we should have final signature documents sometime in early January, and the hope is to close, assuming that we get a City Council approval and the City Council doesn't decide to kill a $100 million project in their city, of a 175-key specialty hotel that will be overlooking the amphitheater. The amphitheater max capacity is we don't know what it's actually going to be. Probably hope to have it get as many as 5,000 total tickets available for any given event. I don't know how many bottoms in the seat that'll entail. I think we still have on our website some of the current renderings of the conceptual renderings of the facility. The entire facility will be built in a manufacturing plant in Las Vegas. We already have pricing from the plant. We're excited about it. This is going to be a great thing for Desert Hot Springs. I think you're going to be thrilled. I think any one of the 4 operators, when we announce who it will be or who we end up signing with, that's really lender driven. Our lender is on that project, is going to dictate who they choose. They're going to have a lot to say with who the end operator will be, and that's it. And then hopefully we'll have some work to do with city staff because we want to condominiumize all of the rooms that oversee the amphitheater. And sell them, because we already have a lot of interest from some production entities. So we're thinking we're going to bring some Tier 1 resorts into a really small, neat, intimate outdoor environment. But that may change if we choose one. One of the entities has a facility in Madrid that is exactly like the facility we've designed, and they are asking us to enclose the entire venue from the hotel to the amphitheater. So that would, since we're going across lot lines, that's going to require some things. So that's probably more detail than I probably should have given you, but it's going to be great for the city. We're really excited, and we think it's great for everybody in the park. It's going to help every one of them in the park. I think it's going to be fantastic if the Amazon project ever actually gets rolling. We understand it's on hold maybe indefinitely. We'll see. But if it does get rolling, then between that and the project that's approved across the street from us, that's 10,000 daily people. So I would anticipate all of our lots out on Indian Canyon are all going to be ultimately turned into some nice restaurants. So I think the city will get a lot of really quality restaurants down there as well. And I think that's about it. Anything else you want to add?
Any more questions, Vice Chair Nindell? Fantastic.
Good question, though. Thank you.
Any questions, Commissioner Wagstaff?
No questions.
Okay, at this time, we will go ahead and close the public hearing and the public comment portion of the hearing. And we will take a 10-minute recess. We will come back at 15 after 9 to continue the meeting. So if you'd like to take a bathroom break, now would be the time. Okay, welcome back, everyone. It is 9:15. We are coming back from break on the City of Desert Hot Springs special meeting of the Planning Commission, Tuesday, December 20th, 2022. Before going to restroom break, we closed the public hearing. We are now on Planning Commission discussion and action. I'd like to remind staff and members of the public that the draft findings that are in your staff report are just that, drafts. We as a commission have people that work underneath us to put together the best information possible for us to make a decision on. The findings that are in the documents, again, are drafts. They are not true findings. They do not become findings until we adopt them as such. Tonight, we have several different ways we can go. We can adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council to approve, or we can adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council to deny. We do have some outlines given to us as a basis. However, those are not outlines that need to be stuck to. As a planning commission, we have the ability to make those findings ourselves. So if there is something in the staff report that you did not see, or you did see that you have questions about, your motions can be altered as such. Again, these are just recommendations to the City Council. The City Council will be deciding one way or another on this item after we take our vote. So we will go ahead and move on to Planning Commission discussion at this point. Ms. Grant, do you have anything?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I wanted to know, and I'll try to be as judicious with my words as possible at this point, are these only two options, the adopt or the approve? I have another proposed suggestion, or should I wait until Planning Commission discussion before I make that suggestion?
Well, we can find out if there's any other discussion before we move on to any motions. I don't see any other discussion. If you have a motion that you would like to make, the floor is yours.
At this time, given the nature of this particular item, and just to be fair to all, I just want to say this one thing. I would love to see the project. At this time, I would like to move forward with the continuance, asking for a study session with City Council to a specific date. And if the rest of the commission is open to that, that's what I'd like to move forward on.
Okay, so you would like to motion for a continuance of a date specific. Do you have a date in mind?
Yes, I do. And this will be a joint study session with council. I was looking at January the 10th, if that day is available.
We have a motion on the floor to continue this item and have a study session with council, date specific of January 10th. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, before there is discussion, the Planning Commission cannot bind the City Council to a session. So if we do have a date certain, it would be to continue the public hearing before the Planning Commission. But at this point, the Planning Commission cannot bind the City Council in any way in terms of a joint session. The Planning Commission could recommend something like that to the City Council, but we cannot bind them to a date certain of like the 18th or something like that. That would be outside of our purview.
Thank you very much, Ms. City Attorney. Back to the motion maker with that information given.
I would like to withdraw, make a new motion if it's permissible at this time.
Okay, we have the motion by the motion maker withdrawn.
Or amended.
Is there another motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we continue this item, not for a date specific, but making a recommendation if council is open for a study sessions at the next available meeting. Is that still binding?
I believe the motion, correct me if I'm wrong, the motion is to continue this meeting to a date uncertain to put together a study session of the Planning Commission.
I would like to continue it to a date uncertain to put together a study session for the Planning Commission, making a recommendation that council attends.
I believe that still takes it outside of our purview trying to stipulate that the council meet with us. Ms. City Attorney, would I be correct in that?
So again, what's before the Planning Commission, we cannot go ahead and bind the City Council. That said, if the motion maker, I know what you're trying to get at, and I appreciate it, but don't forget, this whatever the Planning Commission does will be a recommendation to the City Council, regardless, one way or the other. So if the Planning Commission recommends approval, it goes to the City Council. If the Planning Commission recommends denial, it still goes to the City Council. At this point, what's before you is the item with respect to a joint meeting or something like that that's really outside of the Planning Commission's purview at this time. I mean, there is no joint meeting for this item.
I will withdraw and make the motion again. I'd like to move forward, if I may, Chair, without overstep. Thank you. I would like to move forward and make a motion to set a Planning Commission study session meeting for a date certain of January 24th.
Okay, so your motion is to have a study session for January 24th on this item,
Yes.
but no date to bring it back to the Planning Commission?
We can make a date to bring it back to the Planning Commission on a date of January 31st.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for the Planning Commission to do a special study session on this item January 24th, followed by a meeting on this item January 31st. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. Can we please have the selections on the screen, please? If the mover would select move and the seconder select second.
The mover just... Daniel, would you mind coming here, please?
Okay, Dan, if we can switch that over to a roll call vote. We have a motion by Commissioner Grant to continue this item to a study session on January 24th, followed by a public meeting, date specific January 31st. That motion has been seconded by Commissioner Cook. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Cook? Aye. Commissioner Grant?
Aye.
Commissioner Wagstaff?
No.
Commissioner Nindell?
No.
Commissioner Duffel?
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, the motion has failed. We will continue with Planning Commission discussion and action. Again, this is an item that when we vote this evening, we will be making a recommendation to City Council. City Council will then take this item up and make their own decision. Is there any other discussion that we would like to have, or any other motions that would like to be made at this time? Commissioner Grant?
I have so much to say, but I just don't feel like I'm at liberty to discuss some of the things that I had concern with some of the findings. And I'll just be honest with that, because there's no other way to go with it. I feel like it was mentioned, I believe, by Rebecca Davis, if I'm even allowed to even say that the proposed range of alternatives. When I was going through the agenda and the items, that I felt like there was not enough proposed range, and I did see something that said no project, but it's like, how do we determine what's feasible, what's not feasible? Then I go to the inconsistencies with regards to the sewage system. Now, we did hear what's transpiring, but then there were issues of compliance as well. I know that that's something that we're not looking at, but it's something that we still need to consider. And I want to be judicious and not say too much, but that's why I was opting for a continuance as well, just given also the tenants within Coachillin. It appears to me that I might as well, since we have the mic for it and the platform, I was under the impression that a cannabis business park was the intention. I'm not sure with the language written here if this is the intention, and it caused me a considerable amount of concern as far as the name change and other item and issues here, as far as even the Property Owners Association. I thought the intention of this entity was to establish a business that allowed to be plant touching. I'm now under, it seems like they're all ancillary, and that's what I guess I need clarity on, moving forward on where and how I'm placing my vote. So.
Sure, Commissioner Grant, I completely understand, and I share some of the same thoughts that you do. I've been watching this development for a long time. Coachillin is something, this development has excited me for a very long time. I've been waiting for it to come forward, really, really excited. The community's excited about it. And I, as well as you, remember hearing over the course of the years, talk about amphitheaters, talk about POAs, talk about the reason why a POA was there is kind of like a homeowners association, where that POA is in charge of making sure that all of the tenants are in compliance. That way the city wouldn't have to. I remember those same discussions as you did, and I believe the city attorney may be able to touch base a little bit more on what your question was about findings than I can. So I'd turn that over to the city attorney.
So with respect to the findings, I just want to be very clear for the record. The findings are those of the planning commissions. They are not mine. There are two resolutions, one for approval with various findings as well, one for denial with various findings. If the planning commission wants to change any of the findings, you take them out, put more in, change if there's a typographical error, you name it, those findings are 100% yours to be made. You can change them in any way, shape, or form that the planning commission deems fit. I hope that clarifies things a little bit, both in the recommendation of approval. There are several findings. Those could be changed as the Planning Commission deems fit, and also in the recommendation of the denial, same thing. Those findings can be changed as the Planning Commission deems fit. Again, these are Planning Commission's findings, not mine, which will then be go up then to the City Council, either recommendation for or against.
Thank you very much, Ms. City Attorney. Ms. Grant, did that answer your question in regards to the findings?
Yes, it did. Then I had additional questions, if I may, or for more statements.
Yes, ma'am.
There were some additional concerns as far as the language for hemp. It seems like when that changes, that it will no longer go towards the Planning Commission, which seems like I believe that a lot of the duties will be taken away and given over to administrative review. I think that is something that we need to hear because the criteria or eligibility for hemp is different from cannabis. And I'm sure that you all know, but I'm not sure how our city will handle it when we are open for it. Then, what else did I have? Okay. I felt there was a lot of flexibility, and I know that's things that we're not looking at, but as far as the art in public places, that was another concern for me. And then, hold on. I think I had asked staff, but I believe I did hear the applicant mention it. I'm looking for what is the owner occupancy as far as this specific project. Are they the majority owner or not within the park?
Commissioner Grant, from what I've heard so far from the testimony from the applicant as well as testimony from staff, currently the applicant is the primary majority shareholder of the project. Was there any other questions?
Last question, because is there a permit that has been paid for? That's what I need to know from staff, because from my paperwork, it does not seem like anything has been paid for as of yet.
Okay, does staff have an answer for that?
Yeah, so the applicant did provide correct information this evening that there was the regulatory permit for the cannabis business park was paid for, I believe, on 12/12 or 12/13.
Does that satisfy your questions, Ms. Grant?
Yes, it does for now. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Cook, do you have any questions of staff or any discussion?
No. Thank you.
Commissioner Wagstaff?
No questions.
Vice Chair Nindell? No. Okay, well, we have no questions, so we're back at the point in the meeting where we need someone to make a motion, either recommending to the City Council approval or recommending denial, or a different motion, but we do have to proceed from here with something. I ask again, is there a motion to be made?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Okay, is that a motion that the City Council of the City of Desert Hot Springs, California, 1, certify the environmental impact report, 2, adopt the mitigation monitoring plan, 3, adopt findings of a fact pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act and adopting a statement of overriding considerations, 3, approve Coachillin specific plan amendment number SP-21-2, amend the Coachillin specific plan in the city, and 4, approve the ordinance amending chapter 17.200, approving the project?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Okay, hearing no second, the motion fails.
I'm going to make a motion to adopt a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending the City Council of the City of Desert Hot Springs, California, 1, find the California Environmental Quality Act CEQA does not apply to the project as defined pursuant to the Public Resources Code section 21080B5 as the project is rejected, disapproved. 2, not approved Coachillin specified plan amendment number SP-21-2, and 3, not approve the ordinance amending chapter 17.200 of the Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code denying the project.
Okay, we have a motion for recommendation to disapprove. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If we could please make our selections on the screen.
We can continue to do the roll call vote.
Okay, it sounds like we are having some technical difficulties, so we have a motion and a second. We will go ahead and move to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cook?
Nay.
Commissioner Grant?
No.
Commissioner Wagstaff?
Yes.
Vice Chair Nindell?
Yes.
Chair Duffel?
Yes.
Motion passes with Commissioners Cook and Grant opposed.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our meeting this evening. This meeting is adjourned.